In my dreams, I come face to face with myriad reflections of myself, all unknown and passing strange. They speak unending in languages not my own, and walk with companions I have never met, in places my steps have never gone. In my dreams, I walk worlds where forests crowd my knees, and half the sky is walled ice. Dun herds flow like mud, vast floods tusked and horned, surging over the plain. And lo, they are my memories, the migrations of my soul.
Hello, and welcome to the Legendarium Green Team's Malazan series. Welcome to episode 3 of the Memories of Ice series. I am Hurinfan, and I am joined today by BefuddledPanda.
Hi!
JasnahAsABoy.
Hello.
And Ashaman.
Hi, welcome back, everyone.
Ashaman and myself are Malazan veterans. BefuddledPanda and Yasta are reading the series for the first time. Hey, we can say that for the first time. Today we are covering Memories of Ice, chapters 14 through 20. Spoiler warning, everything up these chapters is fair game for discussion. We will be doing our usual chapter-by-chapter format. And content warning for everything.
Lots of
As per
violence.
usual.
Lots of violence, cannibalism, sexual assault. Yep. Also, in case there are listeners that don't listen to episodes all the way through to the end, there are sometimes outtakes at the end of the episodes, if that's something you're interested in.
I especially like the last one. Ash, you want to hit it?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Chapter 14. The assault on Kapistan begins. Gruntle decides to become an active character and is adopted by a tiger. Karuli finds gainful employment in the Mask Council. Bokalin and Corbel Broach overestimate their abilities.
I want to draw attention to the Book 3 epigraph. And I don't know if everybody noticed, but it's about a certain priest that we all know and love, or some of us love.
Yasna's dancing over there.
Well, that was my first note as well, so I'm just like, yeah!
We learned a lot about Mr. Light Touch in these chapters, don't we?
Yeah, a lot of it indirect, and I love it.
Me too. It's not clear. It's perfectly, it has the right amount of opaqueness and lets you, draw the lines yourself.
Yeah, we're introduced to the character Haboric in Deadhouse Gates, but not given the context, and voila, here's the context. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Panda, do you have any notes for this chapter?
Oh boy, do I. So I'm going to start with Gruntle. And I don't know if you remember from last episode, I had said that I think Gruntle is going to be a character that's going to have an important role to play. Nah. Liars. We got to see Gruntle's transformation, and he does play like the rough dude, but underneath he's quite a bit of a softie. And it was also really fun to follow his train of thought going through the siege, and just seeing like how he observes things, and the image of Gruntle with his two cutlasses and him described like as the boar, but then as the tiger. That was really fun. And one of my favorite parts of this chapter was when there was a messenger who was relaying what Gruntle was doing in his heroic leadership to Ikovian. And then Ikovian, he's like, I gotta see this dude for myself. So then he goes and not reveals himself to Gruntle just so that he can see what this guy's like. Yeah.
And he was quite persuasive, he said, the messenger. He's like, I tried to do it like we did, but he's very persuasive. Yeah, I love hearing about him in third person because it's I don't know, for some reason it just has like this epic tale feel, right?
Agreed.
And we don't even see it. We only hear it in third person, but Gruntle picking up the child's tunic and making it a banner, that was so powerful for me.
That was so sad. But yeah, I mean, speaking of that part where it's like, all these people who were like scared and not willing to do anything about it, but he gave them like that motivation. Look what they did to this child. They started to eat the child. Ugh.
Yeah. His militia actually, and the fact that he's like this drunk caravan guard before he leads this militia, It reminds me of the refugees going crazy and attacking Corbolo Dom's troops in the last book. Like, it feels like there's this like narrative about like not underestimating ordinary people, kind of threaded through some of the battles in these books.
Yep.
Which I thought was pretty cool.
I love Gruntle and his militia almost as much as the Grey Swords, because the Grey Swords are amazing as well, right? But when I think the Grey Swords come and meet Gruntle, and one of Gruntle's militia members is just saying, we were the ones who took the gate, because they're talking about holding the gate. And the Gruntle's like, well, we're not the ones who were holding it, are we? So Gruntle gives credit where credit's due.
He does, yeah.
He's a very good leader.
I liked the bit where Idkovian is just standing on the walls, and he's hearing reports come in, and basically seconds later he gives orders to every one of the messengers to take back to them to,
the various parts.
Yeah, various tactical things. And it's not like a very deep thing. It's just, I think, a very well done scene of someone actually commanding an army. Too often in media, we just see like the leader of the forces basically stands at the front and is like, okay, we'll just go and charge them. Sometimes you get exceptionally simple tactics, which is always fun. But here it's you get the sense that once again Erickson really knows his stuff. And also, I'm a big fan of how he doesn't drag the Siege of Kapistan out. It's essentially over within this chapter and chapter 16, 2 chapters.
And it sticks with people too.
Yeah. These 2 chapters are consistently given as examples of just fantastic sieges for the best sieges in fantasy, and I completely agree.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And once again, he's not gratuitous at all. He doesn't like revel in the destruction, the violence, and the cannibalism.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Jerk.
Oh, no. No jerk here. Well, not yet.
So I want to go back to the Grey Swords, because I love the Grey Swords. So we learn about halfway through, when everything's going, to hell in a handbasket, and we learn that the Grey Swords went and built tunnels, even though the council of priests never approved it. I love that. That was so cool.
Yeah, they're like, somebody was like, oh, but those tunnels were never approved, and like, yeah, like.
The destriant
never waited for approval.
The destriant, I believe, was like, I'm compelled to remind you that these tunnels were never approved for construction.
Right.
And he says it like tongue in cheek, like he's in on it. Like, I just have to say this, to rubber stamp that we know that what we did is illegal. Speaking of rubber stamps, not to take away from the amazing heroics of Gruntle and the failed attempt to defend the city on the part of the Grey Swords, failed but nevertheless amazing. I wanted to briefly draw attention to the one scene of comic relief in this chapter, which is the necromancers, our favorite serial killers, showing us that during this siege, neither death nor taxes are certain. Because we have this scene where Buke returns from visiting the Mass Council, I believe, or maybe it's the taxation office. I forget where. Or he went somewhere to appeal for them to not have to pay their taxes on their estate, and they were just like, well, the appeal was denied, but there's nobody at the office. It must have been the Mass Council, because there's no one at the tax collector's office to collect the taxes, right? And of course, I said death is uncertain as well, because they have all these Erdemen from the Panion armies, like guarding the walls, like these zombies and stuff. So it was a nice comic relief in the middle of all this horror and this like bleak atmosphere.
So
I enjoyed it.
Those 2 are terrible, but like they're doing a really good job at protecting their estate and killing lots of Sirdomen and Erdemen and Tennis Gallery.
Well, they even went and like pursued some of them. Yeah.
Oh yeah, when they turned into birds.
Yeah, they tried to get an Aster.
And was it this chapter that was it the beginning of the taxes scene where Wrath Shadowthrone was like seen leaving the estate and like swearing vengeance on the necromancers.
It was a
they
lower
insulted
priest
him?
of Shadow Throne named Marble.
Oh,
He's
okay.
like, wait till Rash Shadow Throne hears about this.
Right. I wonder what they did to insult him, because that's never really revealed. He's just like those, you know. but
I
we
thought that was like Shadow Throne's former like temple, or I think that area that they're around is somehow linked to Shadow Throne's maybe a Rash Shadow Throne or somebody.
Okay.
I actually chose the taxes bit for one of my quotes. The event of siege, alas, offers no relief from property taxes, master. The monies are due. Fortunately, with the evacuation, there is no one at Dairo House to await their arrival. I love it.
Curly was pretty cool in this. He goes to the council. And he's like, I demand title. Like, who are you? I really like Curly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. He seems to know what he's about, that Karuli.
Yeah, something about him.
It subverted. Karuli subverted the trope that we get in a lot of these Malazan books that Erickson has set up. This trope where a lot of the priests are like exactly like the gods they represent, and then you get, I know it's later, but we get to the council, and then it actually is him. So that was a nice switch, because that's one of the only reasons I didn't think that's gonna be Kroll, is because I was like, but it's just kind of like, it's Girl Pust and this other priest, they're just like them, but that was a nice switchoroo.
Yeah.
His name is Karuli.
And that's
See, I called that out.
And now every time Panda thinks that a priest is really actually also just the god, there's even more like credence to those kind of theories now, because we've seen it happen.
Oh, please tell me, Panda, that you have a new theory of who Hood is.
No, God. Not in this chapter. But but originally when we were asked, like, who do we think Karuli's aligned with, I did think it was Cruel, but I didn't think that Karuli was actually Cruel. So I didn't quite get there, but this was really fun to see in the sections that we read. One of the things that also stood out to me was the description. Well, one of the descriptions of how the Tanaskari like overwhelmed the Kapustan soldiers, and the Stani says to Gruntle, they boiled over us through the gate, up the towers, over the damned walls. And that imagery, I guess this was about the Skalandi. That imagery in my mind, I was picturing the film portrayal of the zombies from World War Z.
Yep.
Yeah.
Same here.
Oh, goodness.
I know what scene you're talking about.
I'm just like shivering right now. Chills. Disgusting. But yeah, the World War Z movie, don't associate it with the book, but in terms of how they portrayed those zombies, that was pretty impactful.
Mm-hmm.
We had a similar description in the books too, though, right?
Yeah, but they at least weren't like, well, actually, no, never mind. They are pretty zombie-like. So yeah.
I think the difference is that in World War Z, the book, the zombies are like very explicitly the slow kind, which doesn't really jive with the idea of like boiling over so much for me. It's just kind of like a slow, relentless tide. But
my first quote is from Itkovian, and it's talking about his self-imposed restrictions, religious instructions.
I see you also took the same quote as me.
And perhaps that is the final, most devastating truth. The gods care nothing for aesthetic impositions on mortal behavior, care nothing for rules of conduct, for the twisted morals of temporal priests and monks. Perhaps indeed they laugh at the chains we wrap around ourselves, our endless, insatiable needs to find flaws within the demands of life. Or perhaps they do not laugh but rage at us. Perhaps our denial of life's celebration is our greatest insult to those whom we worship and serve. It's
a good quote, yeah.
Yeah.
I really like Erickson's musings on religion. He does them very, very well.
And does justice. Like, even as a religious person, it's very thought-provoking, and I think it's wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Well, my next quote is about beautiful, horrible imagery. The Tenaskrawi ringed the city in a thick, seething band, 1/3 of a million, maybe more. Such a mass of people as Buke had never seen before, and the band had begun to constrict, a strangely colorless, writhing noose drawing ever closer to the city's feeble, crumbled walls and what seemed but a handful of defenders. Just Buke flying over the city and seeing this noose of people around the city. Just
Yeah. And oh man, I think probably most people have been in large crowds before. What comes to mind most for me is I live in Ottawa, and this is the capital of Canada. So for Canada Day, we always throw a big celebration at the on Parliament Hill, and tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of people come out, and it gets pretty wild. Luckily, people don't generally get hurt, but you can just like feel the power of the crowd around you, and it's so claustrophobic, and it has such interesting effects on even just like how you think that it's really a very unique experience, and makes me sympathize with the Tenaskrawi a lot, actually, because mass hysteria is a thing that humans are very susceptible to. And man, I would like to think that it wouldn't be a Tenaskrawi, but if I was caught up in the same region as them, who's to say?
Just look at the hockey riots. I mean, it's easy to become part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not even when you lose, it's also when you win.
I mean, you got a lot of emotion at that point, and you need to express it, right?
But keep in mind that while it's possible that the wisdom of crowds does play into the Tenaskrawi, that there's also like a magic of domination behind the Panian Seer in terms of the Jaghut Tyrant. So it's not just a mundane crowd thinking. It's powered by this tyrannical magic.
And behind the tyrant, there's another power too, right?
I don't so much think that there is like a magical influence on them as it's just like a common sort of religious fervor that's gripping them, because the Panian Seer has the power of the crippled god, sure, but also the power of Omtos Falak, which is pretty explicitly the power of an individual being, right? I don't think either of the.
But he's a Jaghut Tyrant, and have they not established that Jaghut Tyrants can like magically dominate huge amounts of people and trick them into thinking that they're gods?
I don't think that's so much magical as just the benefit of a Jaghut having long life and supernatural abilities. Like they set up gods to hide behind usually, and then the Emas get really angry when they discover that their gods are actually fake.
So are you thinking it's more like a psychological effect rather than a magical effect?
That's how I interpret it, yeah.
I think it could be both.
Yeah, I think it's both, because I think that they've really played that up in Gardens of the Moon. For example, when he was able to possess Mammoth, and Rake implied that like through the possession of priests, they could even control gods. It was strongly implied in Gardens of the Moon that there was magic to it, and he even possessed a guy.
Well, I think possession is possible, certainly, but
it's not like he would possess the masses.
Yeah.
Either way, I don't think it's important, because I think it's a metaphor made real.
Yeah, that too. But yeah, humans are like we see this behavior in normal humans, so I don't think we need a really magical explanation for it at all. But
exactly.
Well,
sure.
Speaking of tyranny, one of my quotes is about the Panian Seer. The Panian Seer is a monster in truth, a tyranny of need, and this will spread. Defeat him, you would have to kill every man, woman, and child on this world who are bowed to hunger, everyone who faces starvation's a grisly grin. It has begun here on Genebacchus, but that is simply the heart. This tide will spread. It will infect every city on every continent. It will devour empires and nations from within. I see you now, Seer. From this height, I understand what you are and what you will become. We are lost. We are all truly lost. And this is from Buke's point of view. This part got me thinking quite a bit. Okay, speculation. The whole series is, I think, maybe grounded on this concept, this theme here, where we're gonna see the effects of basically like the people who don't have the luxuries that other people have. So the haves and the don't haves, basically, that struggle. Maybe we'll see how the two sides can be reconciled at the end.
That is hopeful thinking.
Excellent speculation.
Hmm?
Excellent.
It
I had the
just-
quote too.
Oh, okay. It just feels like this part was so poignant that it has more to do with the series as a whole, like beyond just this book.
Yeah, Erickson is very good at identifying key, for lack of a better word, I'll call them flaws, key flaws in humanity, and really exploring them in very meaningful ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like, even if there's just one person who feels distraught or like who feels like this despondent, the crippled god will be alive. Like the crippled god will always be alive as long as there's even just one person who feels that way.
I like those thoughts.
Sure. Yeah. So I had two, but I read the second one first. It's about the same subject that Hurin's first one was, but it's got more levity dealing with the same subject. It's probably from the same scene. And we have Itkovian speaking to Carnadas. And Itkovian says, "You suggest then that my crisis is not with my faith, but with my vows, that I have blurred the distinction." And Carnadas says, "I do, Shield Anvil." "Destriant," Itkovian said, "eyes still on the Pandian encampments. Your words invite a carnal flood." The high priest burst out laughing, and with it a dramatic collapse of your dour disposition, one hopes. Itkovian's mouth twitched. "Now you speak of miracles, sir." I love that exchange. And as of yet, we still haven't seen much of a collapse of his dour disposition, but we'll
Not
see.
yet.
Now,
Not so far.
I mean, knowing more about Itkovian later, I get why he's so dour.
Sure.
That poor man.
Totally.
Have I
You start to
told
see
this-
hints of it actually by chapter 20, I think, but
Hmm.
like hints of it starting to break down.
Mhm.
Have I told the story of early Christianity and people's attempts to remain celibate?
No.
No? Oh, okay. Well, a couple hundred years after Jesus dies, Christianity really starts to take root in the Roman Empire. Eventually, it gets recognized and becomes a state religion. Now, people are really worried about having sex and really don't want to do it. So
Okay.
they start castrating themselves.
Oh.
It got so bad that an official edict had to be sent out to urge people to stop
Oh.
by church authorities. So, I don't think Itkovian is quite at that level, but it's a dangerous
I
path.
did not know that. Wow.
Isn't that a fun fact?
That's
Mhm.
very fun.
Yeah. History is a lot of the time stranger than fiction.
Mhm.
Every grimdark author I know, like personally that I talk to, has said, and I've seen some of them that I don't know say this as well, that they often have to like super like tone down their books if they're
Hmm.
paralleling history from what
Mhm.
actually happened, because if they wrote what actually happened, their editors would be like, "What? You can't call it that. You can't do that. That's just on the nose. You can't. It's too much."
Nobody would do that.
Right.
Turns
No
out,
one's gonna
yes,
believe that.
people are wild and have done wild things. Yeah.
Yasun, did you have one more quote or no?
I did. Did anybody else have more? Mine's about the Scalandi, and it's like Gruntle. My quote may become problematic in hindsight after we talk about the next thing, but Gruntle, and it says, "Behind them, the Scalandi were dying by the hundreds, the Grey Swords and the Koppenthal delivering dread slaughter. He wanted to be there with them, in the front line, taking life after life. One seer doman was not enough. 1,000 would not be enough. Not now. He felt himself grow cold, as if the blood within him was now something else, flowing a bitter course along his veins, reaching out to fill his muscles with a strange, unyielding strength. He had never before felt such a thing, but he was beyond thinking about it. There were no words for this, nor he would soon discover were there words to describe what he would become, what he would do. And turns out the word is mortal sword, but
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is that a good segue into the?
Yeah. Perfect segue, actually. So, yes, this becomes the impetus for Gruntle to basically take out all of his rage on the Tenascauri, because, Stani was raped. First, before anything, I'd like to say that the scene where we find that out, I found incredibly powerful, and how it's never explicitly stated, and that the reader comes to the realization at the same time that Gruntle does, and it's just like, oh my god, that happened.
Yep. Yeah, when I was reading it, when I had that realization, it's so much more impactful for the reader to realize it for ourselves than if he just explicitly said it or portrayed it, detail by detail.
Yeah, it had a lot more power.
Yeah, so I've heard other fans of the series complain about this scene and say, oh, how tired. We're using a rape to fuel a male character's struggle to make him want to fight and be heroic. And I can see where that's coming from, and it's certainly a well-worn and often tired thing, but I think that this scene is more complex than those people are giving it credit for, because you get, Gruntle helping his friend, and she makes a point of saying, I don't need your help. And he's like, but do you want it? Then later, once she recovers, she's one of the militia. And it, she's going through all that stuff as well. And like, she sanctions him going off and doing this stuff before she recovers as well. So there's a dialogue, and like, she has agency in the situation. She has a say, and it's not just this that fuels Gruntle. It's also the death of his friend. I forget the guy's name, but it's brought up later. Yes. So there's a lot more nuance to it, and I feel like while we haven't seen too much of the lasting impact and consequences of this for Stani yet in this section that we've read, based on the way that Felison was depicted in the second book, I don't believe that we won't. So Erikson shows, he shows consequence. He shows her asserting, I don't need your help. But then he says, do you want it? And she basically says, yes. There's a lot more to this than just the typical, like, you might see in like some old swords and sorcery stuff or something, where it's just like it happens and it fuels the male character and they go off, and that and there's nothing else for, cut away from the female character, from the victim. So I don't agree with those criticisms, even though I see where they're coming from. That's all.
I agree with your disagreement for a few reasons. So yeah. First of all, this isn't all that's fueling Gruntle. What is giving him his drive? It's also because Harlow died for him. Okay, so if we put it in a different scenario, maybe if he had two male companions, one of whom died on the road, and maybe another one who was either raped or was killed by the Panions, I don't think that this would be as controversial as it is. Not to say that, of course, there are very valid criticisms of how fantasy deals with its female characters. But also, Stunny she is her own character. She does get her own revenge at first. She kills the man who raped her.
Mm-hmm.
In a very, very painful way, about as revenge fantasies you can get. And yeah, her arc isn't done. So yeah, several listeners actually wanted to know about our thoughts on this. And the trope I believe people are most worried about is whether or not Stunny got fridged, which comes from an event in The Flash.
Green Lantern.
Oh, Green Lantern? Okay. Anyways, one of their girlfriends gets stuffed into a fridge, literally, and it fuels his arc for the next while. Yeah, I don't think this falls into that, and I don't think that there is anything inherently wrong with characters experiencing sexual violence, especially in a series like Malazan, where, again, it's not gratuitous. Erikson does not enjoy the violence or violence of any kind that he puts on the screen. And it's just something that humans have to deal with. And unfortunately, women tend to have to deal with it more than men. Although, of course, men also have to deal with it. So I think it would be disingenuous of him not to include storylines like this in Malazan, because if he's showing all the rest that's ugly about humanity, these people deserve to have their stuff shown as well.
And he also shows the rape from multiple sides, and it's not of just women. I mean, we don't see as much of, at least so far, the consequence of the women of Dead Seed raping the dying men, other than, the children that are spawned.
Well, there's no
Yeah.
lasting consequences for the man in that situation because they're dead. I mean, they're already dead before that happens, right? Or dying
Well,
as it happens.
I mean, like, why is it not somebody else who's like championing that and getting revenge for those men?
I agree. I'll just read Cannon Fodder's question. So Cannon Fodder asked, Green Team, do you think having Stoney raped by Steer Dublin was necessary to give Gruntle the motivation to take up the fight against the attackers? Could it have been handled differently? And while I agree with Jasnah and Ashaman a lot, I do think it could have been handled differently, if only to separate itself from that idea of fridging. Also, the idea of male rape by the women of the Dead Seed is a common theme, and I think I would have rather seen it in that context. Maybe I know, and I do think it's different because, especially in fridging, it's just a woman and she only exists there. Stani is her own character. She's a three-dimensional character, and there's a lot more circumstance surrounding the whole thing. But do I think it could have been different motivation? Yeah, I mean, he'd already lost Harlow. I think the child's tunic could have been good motivation too. Or
although the child's tunic came after,
it did.
It becomes his way to motivate everyone else. So it is part of the
Yeah.
motivation, just not his necessarily.
Exactly. But that's what we're talking about, right?
I think Gruntle is a man who has walled himself off from the world almost completely and has only allowed basically Harlow and Stunny and Buke to get into his wall and actually, become close people to him. But before Stunny was raped, he said, I don't know if it was in jest or not, to Buke that he would just join the Tenascowry when the city fell. He's just going to look out for himself, because he's just such a jaded man who cannot deal with how ugly the world is. So he just doesn't think about it or doesn't meaningfully grapple with it.
I think he was full of crap in that scene. I think he was wallowing in self-pity and was trying to not deal with his feelings. But I think it is also worthy of noting that he was already being motivated by Stani being in peril before that scene. He went looking for her.
that is true.
And her being in danger was already his motivation for being out on the streets and like in the thick of things before that scene even took place.
Mm-hmm. When I was reading that scene, I didn't think anything. I didn't have the criticisms that Jasnah, you voiced that other people have had. To me, it felt pretty natural given what we know of Gruntle and how much Stani and Harlow meant to him. I just viewed it as somebody he cared about got hurt, and it really traumatized her. She survived it for now. He didn't actually know if she was going to actually survive through all of this. I think it was just the last straw, and he snapped. Yep.
Chapter 15?
Okay, I just have a question. The Scalandi. So Gruntle thinks to himself, Scalandi, they engage in legions of no less than 5,000. That information, like, how would Gruntle have known that? How long has the Scalandi been around for?
The Panyan to Min has been around for at least, I think, 14 or 16 years, whatever Anaster's age is.
Oh,
So
okay, that makes sense. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. So it's
when
like
when I first read
Go
the book, I thought it was just like a brand new empire, and relatively speaking, it is. But I this time around, I actually appreciate how long it's been around.
Yeah, because when I was reading that, I was like, oh, so the Scalani is like established enough for people outside to actually know of them. So, okay, thank you.
Chapter 15. Silver Fox meets up with some undead wolves. The history of the Kachane Shamal is discussed, and Kaladin Brood tries and fails to hit a small, fat man with his hammer. The Mybe grows increasingly irritable and dreams she is being hunted. Crone chastises Brood.
I know I love when Crone is just being crony. Lost my temper.
Oh, man.
You want me to eat garbage?
Oh yeah.
Well, at least I didn't lose my temper.
At least I didn't lose my temper.
Okay, I have to say this. Krup's mule. Krup's mule makes me smile. It's like so proud and it's just like charging down the hill. And like Krupp is just trying to stay on it. That imagery is so funny. I've had experience riding an Icelandic pony, and the guides that were leading us, they're like, "Oh, you can urge your pony into a trot," and so we did, and like I almost fell off that horse. So, I mean, I was probably pretty comical to watch swaying in the saddle, but anyway, it's hard to balance and stay upright on those things. So, I sympathize. I do think that there is much more to Krup's mule than meets the eye.
Or
we'll
than
talk
meets
about
the eye.
Yes.
Well, it dreams of being a horse.
Maybe, or unicorn, or whatever. I don't know. Are there
Talks
unicorns
a
in this
lot
world?
about her dreams and that mule.
I do have some very wild speculation, but we'll get there later.
Hood?
Yeah, the mule is good. You know what?
I
You
wasn't-
convinced me.
I wasn't thinking that, but sure.
I want to ride an ice pony.
They're so cute and so round. Oh, yeah. Krupp taunting Brood. That was great. Anyway.
So I think this is the chapter we get the realization, well, it's stated explicitly at least, that the crippled god is actually the one behind basically the Pandion and his power. And everybody knew it except for the Malazans.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Just makes you feel stupid.
I mean, they're like the lowest on the totem pole in terms of like, power, but they later, we get a conversation between Corlat and Whiskey Jack where Corlat's like, "Oh, you guys are actually the backbone of our alliance." I really enjoyed that. Speaking of Corlat, the conversations between Corlat and Whiskey Jack, I love it. Hashtag relationship goals. Them
man,
being
right?
able to be vulnerable with each other and just have that communication, which we do see that, they're not perfect. They do have their own flaws, but I love it. I love their dynamic and I just want to see more.
Yeah, this is probably my favorite romantic relationship in this series.
Oh, good.
They feel very organic to me.
Yeah.
The scene with the Mybe and Cole and Murillo is heartbreaking. I had to read it a few times.
Any scene with the Mybe now is...
Oh, man, yeah.
But especially with Cole and Murillo, and they said, "Did you ever notice those copper ornaments she's wearing there? You can see it at our wrist. It's a strange thing. They brighter shine when she's sleeping. And they think she's asleep, and they notice that she's not shining. And she wallows in self-pity after that, understandably. But, I mean, how could you do anything other than pity her?
Yeah, Murillo's like, "Oh, man, it sucks that I'm old, but at least I can look back on the good old days, right?"
Oh.
Well, then he also is like, "Oh, I wish she didn't hear that." But then she thinks to herself, "But why? Like, I wanted to hear that. Like, at least you're being sincere and like you care. You think I just want to hear your silence? It comes off as indifference."
Or all just like trying to reassure her and yeah.
Yeah, it's very tough being around someone who is in a situation like the Mybe. Like, something is wrong with them and it's not going to get better, and there's nothing you can say or do to make that change. I very much admire the people who are able to stick around and keep providing compassion to them as best they can.
So I've had experience with interacting with some people who have depression, and I'm somebody who can be pretty easily affected by somebody else's mood. So like we don't get along well when the person is in that state, and it's something that I'm still trying to figure out, like how can I be useful or like be at least not harmful to somebody who is going through that, depression and things like that. And it's not like every depressed person is the same, right? They also respond differently and want different things. So, you kind of have to figure out, like, does this person want somebody to listen to? Does this person want you to tell them like comforting things, or do they just want to be left alone? And it's okay sometimes where the person really just needs to be alone. Obviously, recognize the signs as much as you can, but yeah, it's not. There's no handbook really that you can follow, as much as like therapists and people like that can be helpful, but there's really no step by step, do this, then this, then this.
Yeah, I've been on both sides of that fence, and I have no clue. It's really, really tough. When I'm in that state of mind, it's people try and help, and I appreciate that. But at a certain point, there's not really much to say, right? Sometimes you just want to get angry, and sometimes you lash out at the people who love you most, and that really sucks.
And that might spiral into self-hatred too.
Yeah, it can and does, and yeah, you just have to try and be as human as you can and understanding as you can. And at a certain point, you have to accept that you're not going to be able to fix it, but maybe you can help a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Any quotes?
I have one.
I like the history of the Kachin Shamal. I'm just throwing that out there.
That was quite the info dump.
Yeah, it is.
I want Callor to teach me archaeology and history.
As someone who is there, I'm sure he'd be very good at it.
So yeah, before quotes, the Whiskey Jack and Dujack's conversation about how they don't want to fight the crippled god seems really like there's not an end game in that conversation. I'm like, what are they going to do? Like sit out the apocalypse? I mean, it kind of sounds like the fate of the world is in jeopardy. If they sit it out and then the world ends, they're dead anyway, right? So I don't know. To quote Kroll from a different part of the book, inaction is a deadly decision.
Yep. Well, I think at that point they're also like, what can we do? We're just mortals, right?
Sure.
And we got all these like ascendants and gods in play. Like, can we just let them take care of it?
Right.
But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how they find their purpose in the fight against the crippled god, because I think there will be something. I'm not exactly sure how yet.
Well, we already see, I think it might be in a later chapter, we already see a little bit of what their purpose is. Corlat, and I think maybe Rake as well. But at least Corlat say that they're the backbone of the army.
Yeah, Corlat says they're the
holding
backbone.
it all together.
Right. It's almost like just them existing is something to anchor all of these other powerful characters. Like, oh, these are people to fight for, and it's not just fighting for their own existence.
It's encouragement in itself.
Yeah, because they start developing relationships, whether it's romantic or platonic, right? And they start caring for these mortals that exist.
How I read that particular conversation was them trying to come to grips with the fact that at a certain point you've given all you can give. And I really get the impression from especially Whiskey Jack in these chapters that all this pressure, the lives that are resting on their shoulders, it's really getting to him and it's breaking him. And at a certain point, you just have to say, I can't do any more, which is very hard for people who like all they want to do is give, right?
Yeah.
Like relating it to the supporting people with mental illness, like at a certain point, your mental health might also take a hit, and you have to recognize that you can't do much more, and this is bad for you. Of course, it's a bit exaggerated when you're talking about the fate of the entire world, but
Yeah.
Metaphor made real and all that. Yeah, at a certain point, you have to trust other people to get the job done.
Sure. And one, one more thing before we, or no, more than one more thing. So there's a lot of tinfoil hat conspiracy theories about Krupp in this chapter. And I know that most of the time people are underestimating Krupp, but are they overestimating Krupp in this chapter? It seems like they put like all the events of Gardens of the Moon and like the beginning of Memories of Ice at Krupp and Kroll's feet in this, and like they conspired to make it all happen. And I'm like, I mean, maybe, I'm not sure, but it seemed like they might be stretching a little bit. What do you guys think? Did Krupp really like arrange everything?
I agree with that sentiment. Like, obviously, Krupp is a very, very, very smart man, right? Maybe the smartest. I wouldn't put him as the smartest. I would put him up there, but I have a few more candidates that I would put in that position. He was definitely important to resisting the Malazans in Gardens of the Moon, no doubt. But you know who was also important? Animander Rake, who decided to come there basically of his own accord.
Mm.
He stopped the demon. He made everything much more complicated for the Malazans. And guess who were the ones responsible for finally dealing with the Jagged Tyrant? The Malazans. Guess who dug up their own munitions, destroying their own plan so that they wouldn't blow up the city? The Malazans. So I think it's very tempting to have a view of things as like someone's in control of it all, you know, pulling the strings on everybody. But my interpretation is that very smart people can have an outsized influence. They can set things up in the right way, but in the end, they can't be the ones pulling the trigger. They can't be the ones swinging the sword. And a lot can go wrong that they have no control over.
Right.
Things are a lot more complicated than people like to think they are.
Yes. Yes. And that's basically kind of what I was thinking, but I didn't know if I was, if I was missing something, so I'm glad that you guys agree. Where did Dujek deploy the other Black Morinth besides Twist? We have not been told that, have we?
You haven't.
Okay. Now I'm done. We can go to quotes.
Yeah.
Speaking of Krupp, my quote. Here comes Krupp's lazy dust eaters. Delighted you could make it, dear ladies. A fine afternoon for a trot, yes? And this is Krupp talking to Corlat and Silver Fox after his mule just charges down the hill. Yeah.
Questions?
Nobody else has quotes?
I don't have quotes.
Oh, okay. I have two. It begins as always with Krupp. Whiskey Jack stared, disbelieving, as the round little man in his food and drink stained clothes drew himself up as straight as he was able and fixed small glittering eyes on Caladan Brood. Threaten Krupp of Darujistan, will you? Demand an explanation, do you? Fondling that hammer, are you? Bearing those and then silence, the warlord bellowed, struggling to control his angers. Gods below, what is Krupp up to? That's Whiskey Jack thinking. Krupp defies all threats. Krupp sneers at whatever demonstration bristling warlord would attempt. And of course, we know what happens next. And then my other quote is about how badass the bridge burners are from the Mybe. The Mybe. Dead is dead, as the bridge burners are wont to say. Those soldiers know the truth of it. Children of the Malazan Empire hold no illusions. They are not easily charmed.
Mm-hmm.
Just in reference to your first quote, I think Krupp's greatest strength is knowing just how far he can push people.
Yes. Oh, I love it.
All right, questions?
Why did Krul and Krupp help create the Mybe? Or not the Mybe, why did Krul and Krupp help create Silver Fox?
Necessity, I think. From Kroll. I think Krupp was just kind of there at that time.
Krupp was just a conduit, I think, a tool.
So there's I thought in Gardens of the Moon that that Kroll was just trying to help Tattersail out, but obviously I know more things now, and I think he was trying to save his sister from Calor's curse so that they could try and fight Calor. And I don't know if he knew about the crippled god that far back or about like the impending situation with the crippled god. At least I know he knew he existed, right? But at least to fight Calor, if not also the crippled god.
Tattersail was just a happenstance.
Yeah.
I agree with that assessment. Speaking of Night Chill.
Oh, well, wait. I just want to ask, do you think as Whiskey Jack and Dujek were theorizing, or you guys think that that they also knew that that Silver Fox would be like the bridge between the camps, or is that too stretchy?
My opinion is that Krull didn't know or didn't have any plans against the Panyan Domin at that time.
Okay, sorry, Panda, go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. So with Silver Fox, I think the biggest unknown for me is what is Nightchill's state of mind and who does Nightchill view as the enemy? And I mean, yes, there's the obvious of Calor, but I feel like there's something more with Nightchill, and we get people recognizing Tattersail, the Tattersail part of Silver Fox. But Lurden is just like quiet and who knows like what his state of mind is really. Nightchill is the one that I'm just like, I feel like that one can get really explosive, and I'm not really quite sure, how the pieces are gonna fit together. But I'm just keeping my eyes on Nightchill.
I will say, I think the precise nature of Silver Fox is probably one of the most confusing things we've seen up to this point.
Jade statues.
Well, the Jade statues haven't blossomed.
Okay.
Whereas Silver Fox is in the full flower of her youth now that she has stolen most of her mother's vitality.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I did appreciate Silver Fox's explanation of the history of the Telanimas with their war with the Jagut. She asks to Calor and Dujek and etc. She's like, have none of you ever wondered why the Telanimas warred with the Jagut? I'm like, yes, I have. Thank you for asking that.
I do appreciate we get the justification for the Telanimas from the Telanimas.
Mm-hmm.
It's about what I expected it would be.
Yeah, their intentions were noble.
Well,
we can debate their outcome, but
it is a bit disturbing though, because it's like they basically want to kill all the Jaguts so that none of the children have the potential of becoming tyrants. And I mean, one of the questions to ask is like, should innocents die just because there's a chance that one of their own would become a danger to others in the future? And I mean, I don't agree with that.
I think it's a very complicated question, morally speaking.
It is very complicated.
Yeah, especially when you have such a power disparity. Like the Amas are like down here, like maybe a 2 out of 10, and the Jaghead are like a 9 or 10 out of 10.
I feel like the Telanimas are pretty well, I guess.
Well, now they are. Before, when they were just Amas, they kind of just had stone weapons.
Okay.
It comes up again and again. The Amas power comes from their group, and the Jaghut power comes from individuals. Enough Amas can overpower a Jaghut, and that's been proven true. It's not fair to compare one of one to one of the other. And I always thought the Amas justification was flimsy at best.
Totally.
I also don't think it's that complicated.
I mean, I think the moral question can be a bit complicated, because if you had the ability to save, many lives in the future, or like prevent something catastrophic from potentially happening, like that's where the more moral complication I think comes from. At least
sure, but like I'm more open to that idea when you have something like a Republican uprising that overthrows a monarchy, and they're like, oh, should we kill like the 3 children of these monarchs? Compared to like, should we eliminate an entire species because they might, some of them might one day cause us trouble? That's like the scale of that.
That's true.
Is part of the equation too,
Yeah.
I kind of see it as like I think I brought it up earlier, but it's like a nuclear analogy. So you have the Jagat, who essentially have nukes, and then you have the Imas. And what do you do in such a situation? Do you just let the people with the nukes dictate what you get to do? Sure, a lot of them are probably nice, but the ones that aren't can really mess you up. So there are a couple solutions, as we discovered during the Cold War. You can get nukes of your own, and you can just kind of aim them at each other, and
Mutually
have
assured destruction.
have a stalemate until one of you dies.
Or you live in that
But the
way
IMAS have
forever.
fired the nukes here in this analogy. The IMAS have fired the nukes.
Sort of. Like they have destroyed themselves in their attempt to rid the world of tyranny.
Which later on throughout these chapters, especially at the end of chapter 20, that we find like.
Well, yeah. Now it's a world where the playing field is a lot more level.
Right.
So
Which
they aren't.
It may be thanks. I mean, it may be due to the Imas like helping to reduce the Jackets so that the playing field could become leveled. So yeah, I think it's more of like there could be lots of different ways to look at it, and everybody's gonna have different.
I agree.
Take away different things.
Ashaman's analogy doesn't work either, because you said that there are two solutions to facing at each other in stalemate. There's another solution: kill the tyrants, and that's it.
Right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, you can kill the bad people with nukes, but you only learn that after a while.
It's like what is the casualty for you to be able to identify the tyrants?
Yeah, especially because the tyrants are so slippery. Like, it takes generations for the Imas to discover that they're being puppeteered by a Jagat. Yeah, the other solution is to get rid of the nukes.
Yeah.
Which
we're burying them under mountains, apparently. So.
Yeah, I don't really see a situation that really works out for either race in like anything that would be perfectly satisfactory, right? I don't think there's a perfect solution here.
Let's move on.
Chapter 16.
Wait. So Krupp's mule. So this is the panda tinfoil hat moment. So Krupp's mule, it's pretty strange. Sleeps while it walks. We never heard about Iskral Pust's mule again after it enters the temple. What's up with that? And it was noted like by one of the Marines that Krupp's mule hovers in the shadows. So I'm just gonna throw it out there. I think that maybe Krupp's mule is potentially the same as Iskral Pust. I have no idea in terms of the timeline between Memories of Ice and Dead House Gates right now, like how it lines up, but whatever. And somehow maybe the mule is linked to the Shadow Warren.
They certainly both have strange mules that are more than meets the eye.
Yes.
I think it's something to do with the Queen of Dreams, personally.
I think something about the Queen of Dreams, yeah, because the mule also dreams, as we mentioned before. Something that's more somber, the Maib storyline, it did have me think about euthanasia and that particular scene between Corlat and Maib, where Corlat is just like trying to, get the Maib to eat and comfort her and like, hey, it's gonna be fine. But really, like, is it gonna be fine? I mean, anyway, I think that Erickson is posing questions about euthanasia with the Maib's character.
Chapter 16.
Chapter 16. Capistan drowns in a tide of humanity. The Grey Swords are betrayed, and Enkovian is left the sole leader of the company. He then retakes the royal palace. Gruntle fills a building with dead.
Where do I start?
Oh, okay. The Gruntle fills the building with the dead. I heard with debt. I mean, I guess one way. Yeah.
Maybe a moral debt.
Yeah.
Yeah, the description of those buildings is awful.
Yeah, it's like ballooning because of the corpses. Ah.
And it's getting hot and oh god.
I mean,
yeah, I think this is one way in which the revenge fantasy angle for Gruntle doesn't really work out, because this is a horrifying image, and I don't think Erickson wants us to wish that we were Gruntle here.
No thanks. There were a lot of very somber moments in this chapter. Brocalion knowing that Carnadas isn't going to survive the next day, and Carnadas just dutifully doing his part. Fenner is with me, sir, Carnadas replied in a trembling voice, and so I shall answer you.
Man.
Wrath Fenner.
Yeah, he's really the Malik Rel in this book.
I was always I'm not convinced by Brucalion's argument that you can't punish someone unless they couldn't punish Rathfiner unless the betrayal was completed.
Yeah,
because there is such a thing as attempted murder, and yes, we do in fact punish it in today's society.
Yeah,
that was a weak argument, but it did lead to it. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it very much reminds me of the Charge of the Light Brigade, because they know they're doomed, but they soldier on regardless.
I think that's just part of Fenner's Reeve, right? Like that's part of their dogma.
Maybe, but if so, then I disagree with the dogma, right?
Yeah, then
it's
yeah. Does anyone else pity Anaster?
Yes.
I didn't want to. I admit it. I did not want to pity him.
Me neither, but I do.
Yeah.
Like even the epigraph at the beginning of the chapter, it's just like, man, that's messed up.
Going back to depression yet again. Sorry, everybody, but this is another place where I sympathize with him, because he's just so full of ugliness and darkness that when it's gone, he's worried that there's gonna be nothing left. And oh boy, that is a relatable thing. It's like at some point you get so deep into it that you think that's all you are, and even if you feel better one day, then it's like, who am I at this point? What? And you have to just accept that there's more to you than that you aren't your mental illness, that you have worth besides, all the bad stuff inside you, right?
I think for Anaster, there's a little more to that. Like, if he let go of his pain, then I think he's afraid that he would have to wrestle with what he's done and how to process that, how to reconcile that, and take responsibility for it. Because when you've got the anger and the pain to justify what you've done, the horrors that you've done, it's so much easier. So I think he's just afraid of the consequence, dealing with the consequence for himself of what he's done.
There's something I do want to say about Brocalion's death. And so we've talked about in the past episodes about making death meaningful, how death is meaningless until people give it meaning. But part of the reason that Brocalion, went anyway is that it was a way for them to choose meaning in their death, and that they knew because they were going to die that what they wanted to happen would happen. And they said that we choose the meaning of our deaths.
That's a good point. And I mean, they died swinging.
Oh my god.
Oh.
He had a flaming sword, and it killed a bunch of people and exploded. And Hood showed up and was like, "I salute you, sir."
Yeah, why do you think Hood showed up at his death?
That's my question. I was like, what about Brocalion?
I think that death was just so metal that Hood had to show up to give
personally
his
greet him.
Yeah.
Hood is a fan of Led Zeppelin.
And speaking of metal, I want a music video of Ikovian in this with his square fighting in the cemetery. I want an At the Gates music video of that scene. That was so metal. So cool.
Man.
It was awesome in the old sense of the word. I'll say.
Yes.
And
All inspiring.
yeah. I feel really bad for Carnetus. Obviously because he literally gives of himself until he dies.
Yep.
But also because he never got to have his confrontation with Rathfenner. I really got the sense that he wanted that, and I wanted that too. I wanted him to put him in his place. But yeah, like so many things in life, that he gets no closure on this.
My quote is from when the Brucalion goes to the thrall to answer the stupid rev thing, and it's just the words that Erickson puts together gives me chills. The air of concourse blackened as 1,500 bows whispered as one. It's just like, oh, I can't.
You get 300 vibes out of that.
Yeah.
I recently rewatched 300 and I looked up the historical context behind it, and it's the tactics used aren't great, but they used a lot of the same lines as
did they?
The Greeks were reported to have used. Yeah, like when they were told about how much that the arrows of the Persians would blot out the sun, then we will fight in the shade. Yeah, that was actually said.
Oh wow! Oh wow!
Mm-hmm.
I've seen 300, but usually I'll go and watch Troy. That's my preferred.
You really like Troy.
Yeah.
Brad Pitt? Yep.
I don't blame you there.
Mm-hmm.
Man can act.
Yeah, she likes the acting.
Yeah, exactly. I watch Formula One for the racing.
I have no questions for this chapter.
I have no quotes and questions.
I have quotes.
I also have quotes.
Oh, right.
Do you want to go first, Ash?
I would love to go first, thank you.
Go ahead.
This is from Edkovian's fight in the square. There would be no rising from his grey swords. Not this time. Indeed, he could not see a single familiar surcoat. The Tenniscauri closed in on the shield anvil from all sides, a man's height's worth of bodies under their feet, and somewhere beneath that heaving surface were Edkovian's soldiers, buried alive, buried dying, buried dead. Again, horrifying.
Yeah. Good thing this is fiction.
Yeah, good thing this doesn't happen, right? And then from Edkovian at the end, I am the shield anvil. I am Fenrir's grief. I am the world's grief. And I will hold it all, for we are not yet done.
Edkovian's my man.
I always get chills from that. Whenever he says, I am not yet done.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of work to do, man.
He's got
There's
a lot of
grief in the world.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
And from the same scene, the captain stepped forward. We forgive your ignorance, sir, she said. He is the shield anvil. Fenrir knows grief, so much grief that it is beyond his capacity to withstand it. And so he chooses a human heart, armored, a mortal soul, to assume the sorrow of the world, the shield anvil. And then I think the next part is Edkovian. Maybe it's still the captain. These days and nights have witnessed vast sorrow, profound shame, all of which we see now is writ as plain knowledge in your eyes. You cannot deceive yourself, sir, can you? Speaking to a Naster, both of them.
I get very Christian vibes from this.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah. One man to assume the sins of the world, which is, no matter your stance, I think everyone would have to agree that it's very powerful imagery and very compelling.
Yep. But in this case, it's not just an event, right? That's like his job day in, day out is to absorb that grief and that pain.
Yeah.
Usually not on this scale, though.
And then the other one is from Brucalion's death. And it says, kneeling, now motionless, in the deepening shadow of the thrall, as the pinions slowly withdrew on all sides, their battle rage gone, and something silent and dreadful in its stead. Staring at the hacked thing that had been Brucalion, and at the tall, barely substantial apparition that took form directly before the mortal sword. A figure shrouded in black, hooded, hands hidden within the tattered folds of broad sleeves. Hood, King of High House Death, come to greet this man's soul in person. Why? I love it.
That was really cool.
The way Erickson introduces Hood and lets us get to know him, masterful.
So here's the thing. In this scene, Hood is like, dude, this guy is like mysterious and dark and like imposing. And then later on, we get a scene with Hood and Quickben, and I'm just like, this dude, man, this Hood guy.
I mean, everyone's sick of Quickben just interfering with all their plans, right?
Just interesting, different sides of Hood. Yeah.
I made a low effort, low quality meme about how sassy Quickben was to Hood in that scene.
Yeah,
I just
appreciated.
imagine Quickben as that kid who would just like walk around and put his fingers into everyone's pies just because he could, you know?
Because it's fun.
Yeah.
You were gonna eat that?
And then
Yeah.
people are like, stop that. And he's like, what? What are you going to do? Quick. You can't catch me.
Hood is very
Alright.
human.
Yeah.
Well, he
Yeah.
comes off like that.
Mm-hmm.
17?
17.
17. Talk is taunted by the Panyan Seer. The bridge burners blast their way into Kapistan. The Barghest and Malazan forces obliterate the army of Septar Kulpath. Bridge burners encounter Gruntle. Paran then observes Fenner's fall. Ikodian punishes, then redeems the traitor, and then accepts the suffering of Kapistan. Gruntle realizes what he has become.
This is a cool chapter.
Mm-hmm.
I love the beginning of this chapter. And you see into Talk's dream, and it's kind of confirmed that Talk's dreams and his visions are linked with the Maib, and the wolves that he sees behind are chasing the Maib, but they're not trying to kill her. And then he sees the vision of Tool and Gareth and Boljag coming to save him where he used to be. And it's so cool, but it's so sad because he's not there. And he called him my brother.
Mm-hmm.
Poor Talk.
Poor Talk.
I mean, I want to hug the dude, but I think he's done with hugs for a really long time. Like forever.
I would agree. Yeah. I really like how Erickson subverts the trope of a siege, and then the besieged city is like, oh, we need to hold out for these days. And then everyone's like, there's no way you could hold out for that many days. And then they do it anyways.
Okay,
In this,
I had a
it's-
question
Yeah.
about that. So how many days did they hold
like-
out for?
It's like 1 or 2.
Okay, but the Paran and Barghest, they were like a few weeks away, weren't they?
6 days, I think. 5 or 6 days.
Something like that.
Yeah,
So before the siege started, they said that the armies of Rake and them were 6 days away. And
Oh,
the
6
bridge
weeks
burners
away
and the
now?
Barghest,
they were 6 weeks.
6
6
weeks
weeks.
away? Wow, okay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's
And
why I was
then-
confused by the
But the
timeline.
Barghest were closer. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
That's why they
The
got there
Barghest were
first.
closer, and that's where they got there for, for the bridge
Okay.
burners.
Got it.
Yeah, you. This is a situation where they're like, you have to hold out for 6 weeks. And guess what? They don't make it past the 3rd day.
Yeah, thank goodness that, there were people closer that they didn't know about necessarily, but they were still
Still too late.
too late.
Yeah. Well, not too late for the most of the citizens of Kapistan, which is nice.
That is true. It's
Although-
just the defenders,
Yeah.
yeah.
Too late for Prince Jalarkin, who is so underappreciated.
That guy is
he
so,
was
he's a bro.
He's just like I think the perfect civic leader. Like, he cares about his citizens. He's not willing to. He's not above bankrupting himself to save them. And really, can you ask for more? And then his reward is to get skinned and eaten. No good deed goes unpunished, right? The Mass Council is fine, though. Thanks, Cruel, for saving those guys.
Ugh.
Perrin has a lot of anxiety in this one. It kind of gets lifted. Do you think that a lot of his anxiety was coming from experiencing his first battle?
It may be because he's
never been in a battle.
Yeah, which is kind of surprising to think about how he's been in the military for a while and
Mhm.
he's been with the bridge burners, but this is his first actual battle.
Yeah.
He's
seen,
trying
like,
for a pacifist run.
He's seen a bit of combat, but yeah, nothing on anything approaching at large scale.
Yeah,
and
he
gave himself
became a
lot of
commander.
buffers.
He became a commander without actually having fought in a battle.
Yeah, And he talks about that later. He could have been a high fist or a fist if he wanted.
Right.
Not through merit, but just because of connections.
Right. Anyway.
I like strong Perrin when he's talking to Night Jill and he's like, I will fight you. I'm over anxious body aches Perrin. But he was almost killed by Picker, and I felt so bad for Picker after Malak calls him out. It's like, man, I had that torque in my arm. And
and then Blend and Picker were like, he is a good commander for the bridge burners.
The rent's coming around little by little.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Perrin is... He mopes a lot, but when he stops moping, he's very effective.
Yeah.
Hey, we all get why he's mopey, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to be the master of the deck. An ill-defined and ludicrously important position.
Ill-defined, to say the least.
Yeah.
And
like,
also...
hey, I want you to bless our gods. What does that mean?
What, you don't know?
Do you?
I mean, he's like, oh no. I guess I'll have to talk with my elders.
Oh, okay. Speaking of Perrin, whatever. The Hounds of Shadow return to the Warren of Darkness. That's significant somehow. I also went back to Gardens and reread the portion where Perrin was talking to Draconis, which we didn't know it was Draconis at the time. But Draconis said, there are dragons among us. So in Rake's sword, in Dragnapur, there are people that he killed that, well, whether they're like, oh, no, never mind. I thought I had a thing, but I totally didn't. So I don't know if that means like there are other Soul Taken who turn into dragons that Rake killed, or if like they're just dragons that Rake killed. Which that would be really cool. Like Rake, when he's in his Soul Taken dragon form, does he still have Dragnapur?
I don't believe so.
I don't know.
Okay.
Kind of like, I think the shapeshifting in Malazan is kind of like you just absorb all of the things you're wearing.
Okay.
Better than the Incredible Hulk type.
That would mean that, yes, that is true. That would mean that Rake would have killed a dragon as like Rake himself and not in his Soul Taken form if he were to use Dragnapur.
He could have beat it up first in dragon form.
Okay, true.
And then, like,
okay.
Now we know there's at least one Soul Taken dragon in Dragnapur because the Lord of Ghislaine was a Soul Taken dragon at the end of Gardens of the Moon. And
but that
Draconis,
was after he said that.
Yes. And Draconis, I mean, he could probably turn into a dragon, right? His name is Dragonus.
Okay, fine. Good point. But
it would be really disappointing if he couldn't turn into a dragon.
I know, right?
But he says there are dragons, multiple among us.
Maybe Rake split off a part of himself, killed it, and that's also in the sword.
Oh my
Spoiled.
god.
So
He's just like the tip of his
Horcrux
tail.
is not just for Harry Potter.
Oh no.
oh, let me stop you right there. So this is the first chapter, and it will be true of every chapter after this. I'm now reading for the first time for the podcast. Twice, but I'm a noob now. But we get a timestamp in this chapter. This chapter is equivalent to Deadhouse Gates chapter 7.
Mm-hmm.
So because Perrin sees Hiboric pull Feanor into the world, and we know from the chapter previous to this, we know that wasn't a flashback or something, because Carnidus said, Feanor is with me, and therefore blah, blah, blah. So this is chapter 7. So if it stays like relatively even, which it may not, because different passage of time and chapter counts in different books is totally possible, stays relatively even, we might not see much of Duiker in this book, because that means that this book is like skewed in the direction that won't let us see him, sadly. But maybe it won't be that way. I really appreciated Rake's brutal honesty about his own flaws and his own self-interest. And he was just basically like, yeah, like we're all into liberation because like we're powerful libertarians essentially. And he like was like, we don't want to be in check. We don't want we don't want to be
We don't want others to tell us what to do.
We don't want borders for Moonspawn. And he's very honest about like that, and in the same at the same time that he's basically saying, so what if they haven't been honest? So what if the Empire replaces the Pandian Domin? Like it's actually like pretty good as far as empires that I've seen
better.
goes, Yeah. I really appreciated how like straight up he was in that scene.
Did Carnidus die before Brookaelian?
Yes.
And Carnidus said that Fenrir is with me?
Oh, he died after. No, I think he died after because he died when Itkovian woke up.
Woke up.
Yes,
because that was after Brookaelian. I have a theory.
It was after Brookaelian died. Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, because we don't see like side by side the timeline, but
Itkovian has a vision of what happens to Brookaelian. And
yeah. Okay, yeah.
And then he wakes up, and then Carnidus is like, "Oh, hey, I didn't heal you all the way. I'm sorry about that." And Kovian's like, "It's fine. It wasn't fine, but
it's just a flesh wound."
Yeah, and actually, then Carnidus dies in his hands.
This brings up the vision that Ikovian has of Brookaelian's death. Brings up something I forgot to bring up because I didn't have it in my notes. We get that scene of Brookaelian's death from Ikovian's point of view. And it's reminiscent of Coltane's death scene in that you have it from the point of view of somebody who's like zoomed out, detached. It's like they're watching a movie. They can't do anything about it. And it hits on this theme, a theme that's developing. If he does it twice, I'm calling it a theme, I guess, of witnessing these tragic and heroic moments, of having somebody that witnesses it.
And Hurin is wearing his witness shirt,
right? And that ties into my last note before the quotes from this chapter, which is that we get a view of what harm can be caused to the witness when they take in all of this tragedy, all of this horror, and can't fathom an answer to it at the end of the chapter with Buke, the Sparrowhawk, and the wording actually of that scene where Buke departs and decides not to come back, and basically I read it as deciding not to become human again. The Sparrowhawk that was once called Buke, I believe, is the wording. I didn't write it down, so I could be wrong, but it's something like that. He like completely decides like I can't deal with this. I can't fathom the level of this horror, and he just leaves.
The last words of the chapter were really powerful about that. Is that there was pain in the gifts of the elder gods, but sometimes there was mercy.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the Sparrowhawk that had once been Buke.
Yes.
That had been reading. Yeah.
I read it as Cruel saw Buke. He saw a man that was tortured by his life, by his past mistakes, and he gave him a way out of it. I think once Buke learned that he could turn to a Sparrowhawk, there was no going back from him, no matter what, essentially. I don't think he would ever come back. Because even in his first transformation, he's like, oh, wow, such freedom. This feels excellent. Cruel, thank you for this gift. I don't think he'd go back. Also, I wonder, because we get the fact that the Malazans have turned some pretty low-rate cities into ones that can rival Darujistan. I wonder what would happen to Darujistan if it was taken by the Malazans. Would it become more successful? Maybe. Especially because, as far as I could tell, the people who were fighting to keep Darujistan liberated weren't doing it for any high-minded motives. We already went over rakes. But it seems, Darujistan to me seems like a city where the nobles go out and they have a bunch of parties and don't care at all about the common people.
Sure.
Yeah. And from what I figure, Malazans might come in and equalize that a bit. It seems like a place that's very nice to be in if you're rich.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But go ahead.
Well, I wanted to go back because Hurin said he had a theory. Do you remember what your theory was?
I do, but I don't think it works. So I was thinking that before Brookaelian's death is when Fenrir died. And that because Fenrir wasn't there to accept his soul, that's why Hood came.
Okay.
Yeah,
The
that is something I had actually considered as well. And I don't know if it works or not.
I don't think it does because
Carnados was still alive.
Carnados was still alive. Also, the bridge bearers didn't come into the city until after I think Berkelion was dead. So
Gotcha. Good thought, though.
I also like a lot how we get the idea that when some evil is visited or some injustice is visited upon like a high priest of a god, that actually hurts the god a lot.
Mm.
Like we have the example of Haboric, who was probably set to become the next Destriant.
Right.
He was unfairly revved. He got his hands chopped off. Fenner
Right.
wrote on his body all those tattoos saying, "Oh, this I don't agree with this. This is BS. You guys shouldn't have done this." And
the hands were poisoned to him.
The hands were
Right.
poisoned to him in his own warren. Yeah,
And it was the reason
And-
why he was pulled out.
mm-hmm.
Wait, that it was the reason why he was, but he wasn't. Oh, you mean because Haboric touched the jade statue and it's
And then touched
Okay.
He still had a
himself.
link to Fenner's realm, and Fenner was very weakened by this injustice
so
for a pious priest, and that
Mhm.
power pulled him into the real world.
so that begs the question: the jade statue. What really is it? And Paran, he saw the obelisk from the deck of dragons. I believe the obelisk is the jade finger.
Could be many things.
Well, we see the figures, the three figures at the bottom of it.
Right. Paran sees Tattersail,
Bowden,
not Tattersail,
Malazan.
Felison, Bowden,
Bowden.
Haboric.
Network. Yeah.
So was the jade finger like from Fenner's statue of some sort?
Whatever it was in this section, we are told somewhere, I don't know if it's in this chapter or not, that it was Habor coming into contact with the Warren of Chaos when he touched the jade figure. That caused Fenner to be. I forget if it's Rake who says this or if it's in Perrin's vision. Somewhere, somebody tells us, and maybe they're wrong, because of course anybody can be wrong in Malazan. Somebody tells us that by contacting the Warren of Chaos and the hands being at Fenner's feet, that's what pulls Fenner into the mortal realm.
Yes. I'm not going to pretend that I could understand all of that, how that works. I mean, that's what I meant. I understand the words, just how it all works.
Oh yeah, I don't know why touching a jade statue would put you in contact with the Warren of Chaos.
Right. Okay.
It's conduit. Green jello is very good conductive material.
No. Spindle's hair shirt. The burnt patches are growing back.
Horrifying.
Why? How? Like, I'm really questioning what the inspiration for this hair shirt is. Because, dude.
I think it was written to just gross you out.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
You specifically.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. It was.
As to the mechanics of how it grows back, I'm pretty sure it's the spirit of his mother.
Yes.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Mommy issues are prevalent in this book.
Yeah, I get a lot of Psycho vibes from Spindle.
Yeah, poor guy though.
Psycho the movie, not Psycho.
To be in that. Oh, got it. Yes.
Shall we move on to quotes?
Yeah.
My first one's a very, very short one, but made me cry. So Ikovian was grieving the loss of Fenner, and he says, "Who shall embrace me?" He's
Not
embracing
the
everybody.
matron.
Not the matron. Well, I mean, she'll embrace you. She'll embrace.
No, he
very
doesn't want
well.
that. No.
I don't think Ikovian is very concerned about physical pain at this point. So
Good
maybe he would
point.
appreciate it. Who knows? And we know that the matrons once had the power to beggar the gods of today.
Poor Kovian.
Yeah. I would like to share my next quote because it's going to be my last for the episode. The hand of vengeance stayed cold only so long. Any soul possessing a shred of humanity could not help but see the reality behind cruel deliverance, no matter how justified it might have first seemed. Faces blank in death, bodies twisted in postures no one unbroken could achieve, destroyed lives. vengeance yielded a mirror to every atrocity, where notions of right and wrong blurred and lost all relevance.
That was
I marked
Paran,
that.
right?
Yep, I
Yeah.
marked that
Yeah.
too.
That was a
I think
good
that-
call. You going before me.
Yeah. No, I figured that at least one other person would steal the quote.
I also think that was a little bit of the cause for his anxiety, because before the battle he was talking about vengeance and like taking out on these people, and then he gets there and he's like, no, this is not what I want. And I
Right.
think that was like kind of a shock for him.
And
He
is
turned
this
this
the
strong parent?
is this the first time that we get kind of a realization of the horror and like a compassion for the horror that is visited upon the Panions? At
It's
least,
come up quite a bit, I think.
yeah. I think this was the first one that really hit me.
Yeah, it's probably the most overt so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This one, I feel like I just think everybody should read it, regardless of whether you read the book or not. And I guess they wouldn't really understand the context as much, but it's just some version of this is everybody should read it.
Yeah. Malazan made me a lot more reluctant to judge people for the worse.
I can see why.
Yeah.
Just from the beginning of when we were doing the gardens episodes, and everything just seems so simple. Like the Empire is bad, Lysine is bad, and then now, or even going through Dead House Gates, it's just, yeah, there are so many sides to everything, and to discount or to make everything so simple, it really does do a disservice to society.
Yeah. And
Humanity.
I think importantly, Erickson doesn't fall on the other side. I don't think he says that there are no right answers
Mm-hmm.
or no things that should be condemned. It's just life is really, really complicated.
People are really complicated.
Mm-hmm.
I got another one. We are all pushed into a world of madness, yet it must now fall to each of us to pull back from this abyss, to drag ourselves free of the descending spiral. From horror, grief must be fashioned, and from grief, compassion. Sounds like an Ikovian quote.
Sounds like an
Ikovian has a lot of good quotes.
He's a bro, man. He's a bro.
He is the
yeah.
coolest paladin I've ever seen in fantasy.
I think
Hands
he's the
down.
most morally upright person we've seen so far.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Though he's not without flaws.
Mm-hmm.
He's very self-deprecating, and I agree with Caladan Brood about how ridiculous that is.
I mean, I kind of relate in that with Ikovian on that front, because part of it is my upbringing, but also just like why am I that valuable? Like, why would I be more important than other people? I don't. Part of it is also not wanting whether it's like the attention or the burden that comes with being recognized. Yeah. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very. I relate as well.
So we talked about how morality is not that simple, but this chapter we get the Fenner's Reeve on Wrathfenner, and
Yes,
we get.
that's true.
And before that, I hated that guy. He was the worst. And we get a glimpse into like what led him to this path, and it gets so bad that even like he gets taken over by some alien thing, and it was all weird. But then Ikovian actually embraces him and takes all of his pain. I just thought that was very Malazan.
And he tries to prevent Ikovian from taking his pain in the only decent thing we've seen him do.
Yeah.
Well, is it him or is it the crippled? Well, the thing that overtakes Wrathfenner.
You think that was the crippled god?
Well, it was. Yeah.
So I'm not
Yeah.
sure whether it was the crippled god. I do suspect it was, but I definitely think that the alien god that Ikovian tries to like do his little atonement spell on was the crippled god.
Yeah, because I think it goes back to the Inester thing that we were talking about, how the pain, the awfulness is just so integral to that identity, and they're like, if I let it go, I'm nothing. I don't know what I am. So yeah.
So I got one more quote, last one. The Riva Fenner voiced the truth of war. It spoke true of the cruelty that humanity was capable of unleashing upon its own kind. War was played like a game by those who led others, played in an illusory arena of calm reason. But such lies could not survive reality, and reality seemed to have no limits. The Reeve had a plea for restraint and insisted the glory to be found was not to be a blind one, rather a glory born of solemn, clear-eyed regard. Within limitless reality resided the promise of redemption.
I love that quote. It was almost one of mine.
Redemption is such a powerful idea.
Yeah.
And a very attractive one. When I read that, I was immediately thinking of the commanders of World War I, because these were men who would just order tens of thousands of men to their death every day, and they wouldn't have to see it. They wouldn't have to be in the mud fighting like that.
Or just because they didn't know how to fight.
They also didn't know how to fight, but yeah.
There's a reason why officers are armed with pistols.
Russian ones, at least.
So I've got two quotes.
Okay.
One short, one's long, and they're both funny. So this one's Gruntle and Wrath Trake. Starts with Wrath Trake. These are not matters open to debate, mortal sword. You are what you are. I'm a caravan guard captain, and damned good at it. When I'm sober, that is. You are the master of war in the name of the Lord of Summer. We'll call that a hobby. A what? And then we have Blend in the longest speech that she has in this entire book so far. An explanation. All right, here's what I think I've been seeing. The Grey Swords had some business to clear up, which they've done. Only it damn near ripped that commander to pieces. But Mallet, drawing on who knows whose powers, has lent some strength, though I think it was the captain's hand that brought the man back from the dead. And no, I never knew Perrin had it in him. And we've been thinking lately that he was more than just a willow-spine noble-born officer. We've just seen proof of our suspicions. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing for us. He won't stick a sword in our backs, Corporal. He might step in front of one heading our way, in fact. As for Gruntle, well, I think he's just shaking himself awake, and that masked priest of Trakes ain't happy about it. But no one else gives a damn, because sometimes a smile is precisely what we all need. And what a great quote to go out on this horrific chapter on.
She's so perceptive. Oh, I love her. She's such a smart cookie.
She is.
Also, the fact that Wrath Trake cannot appreciate the fact that the mortal sword of a cat god doesn't want to cooperate.
Not just any cat, a tiger.
Yeah.
The whiskered one.
Yesa has a question. Let's go to that.
What are the wolves in the dreams that Talk/Tog run with, trying to deliver to the Mybe?
Maybe they're trying to make her one of them.
That doesn't sound like delivering something, does it?
Deliverance from her pain.
Oh,
Giving her an option that's not death.
The way Talk phrased it, I thought he meant they were trying to like give her something. Like,
I don't know.
I took it more literally and less metaphorically, but you might be right.
I have no idea.
Let's start. Okay, chapter 18. Quick Ben reawakens and resumes his meddling, making sure to chat with necromancers along the way. Animander plays diplomat. Ferran deliberates on the merits of giving a house to a cripple. Idkovian reforms the Grey Swords.
Oh my god.
This is a very Quick Ben centered chapter.
It is,
and I love it.
I do.
It's also a very long chapter.
Yeah, it's very long. He gets control of all of his warrens, which is really cool. And like the way they describe it, he's out all these deals with all the gods and the Queen of Dreams and Hood. And he talks to Hood, and that conversation is awesome. And then he has the conversation with Coral Broach. It was Coral Broach? Or was it,
it was Broach and
Bokalane.
Bokalane.
And then like he slams them, and that whole thing was fantastic to read, and it was really funny.
And him and Telemandus, their dynamics. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, like you should have saved at least half your power, and he's like, I did.
He talks to Perrin and makes a deal with Hood, but he doesn't go with the deal, and I love Quickman. Yeah,
Quickman's great. I get the strongest Hannibal Lecter vibes from Bokalane in this section of everything I've read for Bokalane, because he like invites him to sit down and they have wine together, and they're very civilized. And he even
Very
like
sophisticated.
right, and he even
Mhm.
like blows Brooch out of the water, and he's still like just like having like this like civil conversation with him. Yeah, it very like Hannibal a la the show, with Mads Mikkelsen vibes. It was nice. But with a slapstick element added into it, because you never see Hannibal made to look that incompetent and powerless like you do Bacalane and Brooch in this section. The slapstick nature of it it kind of undercuts that like intimidating prowess that you'll get from Hannibal. I liked it a lot.
And the Woody version's blood.
Yes. Yeah, that
Poor
was great.
Nancy. Like
Poor Mancy.
Nancy's like,
Nancy.
I'm just trying to get you your wine, and I tasted it. Wait, what? It's blood? Ugh, it was irony. Ugh.
And then Quickman takes him out. And he's like, "You gotta kill him! Kill him!"
Oh my goodness. Okay, Nancy, like I hope this character like gets a really good ending. Poor guy having to like he doesn't like his job, and he probably, I don't know, I guess he can't leave it for fear of the retaliation, or maybe he's like magically chained.
Mancy is the modern man.
Right? They're not bad employers.
So
Mhm.
part of the appeal for Mancy of the job is he's well paid, and he doesn't have to live with his wife and kids.
Yeah.
You should definitely check
Spoilers.
out the novellas.
Oh,
He is a
okay. I was
great
like, I
character.
did not get this information from this book.
Actually, no, he does mention it in book 1 of this book, I believe. It's like a one line. I mean, it stuck with me
okay.
more this time because I'd read the novellas, right? But he does say it to Gruntle, I believe, at the earlier
Okay.
on. Maybe not the well-paid part, but at least the I don't want to live with my wife part. Though
I
part
see.
of me suspects that the cat might be his wife, like transformed, but I'm not sure. The cat
Okay.
thing is a little weird with Mancy and the cat.
Got it.
Yeah, I like how it's obvious that Bocalin and Coral Roach are used to being top dogs, like the scariest guys that anyone's gonna meet. And you know what? They don't get to be here. They're very much out of their depth. And they slowly and very painfully realize that over the course of the book.
Wait, is it this chapter? Do they get beat up at the end? Is that
Next chapter.
Is that later? Next chapter? Okay. They get beat up a lot in these books.
I love it.
I love it. Because they're so cool and powerful, but they keep getting beat up by soldiers.
I liked when like the camps found out that the Malazans are just, they're playing a game, and Rake is the most perceptive. He knows everything already, and he just lays it out.
Oh yes.
He sees it better than anybody.
Okay, the Rake and Whiskey Jack friendship, I ship them very much. There should be fanfic for these two, just saying. But yeah, the way that Rake was on the side of the bridge burners, I wasn't expecting that. And the way that Rake also gives us information of some insight into probably what Lacine was also thinking in fighting, Brood and all these.
It's like we're her enemy, and she probably doesn't even know why.
Yeah, we're just fighting so that we're not, our freedom is not impeached upon.
Wait, wasn't that in the previous chapter?
No, it's in this one.
Oh, I
Yeah,
talked
it
about
is
it
in this one.
for
I
the
know.
last chapter. Oh
It's
man,
okay.
I wrote it down wrong.
It's okay. Yeah, so that was nice to see from Rake's point of view. But speaking of Whiskey Jack and Corlat, their exchange, they have their first lovers quarrel.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it seems like they were playing a bit of a game of who will say "I love you" first.
I like that scene. My answer will be what you say.
Yes, exactly.
It's their second lover's quarrel.
Oh, okay.
They fought about the Mybe earlier.
Oh, okay. Their second lovers quarrel.
This time it's personal.
Well, no, it was about trust before. She thought he was hiding a bunch of stuff from her. And it was
I
about
didn't-
trust this time
I
too.
didn't really see that one as a lover's quarrel. It was more of like them being vulnerable to each other. But this one where it was like they weren't sure if they were actually going to be able to reconcile. Like Whiskey Jack didn't think they were going to be able to.
Yeah. He immediately realized that she knows he lied to her. Oof.
Right.
I also really like how unpredictable Animander is to the outside observer, because oh boy, does no one's able to figure out this man. He just keeps everything in his little noggin, and
It's really
no one
shocking
can
for the
figure it out.
reader.
Yeah.
We get the Maib talking about poison milk.
Mm.
They talk about poison milk a lot in this book. I think it's, feeding the themes of motherhood and being a mother and being a child to a mother and the relationship that entails.
Silver Fox is all grown up and hardly writes to her anymore.
Well, okay. So I know that the Maib resents Silver Fox for not visiting her. But at the same time, we also get a glimpse of why Silver Fox doesn't visit her, because guilt. She feels guilty of having it's I mean, I don't know how much control Silver Fox necessarily has over like draining of the Maib's life force. But yeah, she feels guilty. She's like, I don't think she wants to see me. Like they just have this miscommunication, I think. Like nobody has actually said, how do you feel, Silver Fox? And then gone and told the Maib, like, hey, this is how Silver Fox feels.
Not only that,
Right?
like the Maib in her dreams she thinks that she's under a great duress, and she thinks it's because of Tattersale.
Right.
Well, now that Corlad told her that the the I word thing.
Right. And it's really by a force opposed to Silver Fox, as we find out in the next chapter, I believe. Because Tog and the other one want their kids back.
I have no more notes of this chapter.
The Maib also one thing that is really sad is like I definitely relate to and see why she feels that a lot of the actions people around her are taking are harmful to her, or like that people don't see the way their actions affect the Maib. But she takes it a step further, and I understand that she's in a lot of pain and that people do this, but it's sad to watch because she sees malice in the actions of her friends, not just like unintended harm from their actions. She believes that they're maliciously coming after her, and it's pretty sad.
Do you think, Yesta, that the cripple god will maybe use the Maib somehow in the future?
I mean, I think that is certainly an option that's on the table, but it does not necessarily have to go that way. And I have faith in Krupp and his statements that we haven't seen the end of this tale.
Okay.
It's also interesting that we get indications that the Maib has a power all of her own, although we don't know the exact nature of it yet.
What do you mean?
Let's see if I can say this. Yeah. Okay. Hurin's right. I'm not going to say anymore.
Well, there is something that was said before about like how the flower. Hold on. I have it. Yes, Krupp's gifts to Maib. They are magicked and give her dreams. They are of the first Rivi, and they've yet to fully flower in power. So maybe that's what he's talking about. Okay, maybe
Although
not.
her dreams started the night before Krupp gave her those gifts.
Yeah, but Krupp's gifts are I believe Krupp's gifts are supposed to make her dreams like a comfort to her. Like
it ain't working if that's true.
It's because she's chosen to not see it that way. She's chosen to see everything in a very negative light. But I think if she allows herself to get past those negative thoughts, then she would actually be able to receive the gifts that Krupp meant to give her.
Backing up just a little bit, Quickbin had way more insight into the Elder Gods than I expected him to. He seemed to really have Krull's number.
Yeah, and my question is like, how does he know?
Maybe one of those 12 people he ate in the desert knows about it. Yeah. I also thought it was interesting that Paran seems to have so much insight into how both of his sisters are going to react and how they're going to be impacted by each other's reactions and how they'll grow based on it. And he seems to really just know everything about what they're going through and what's going to happen to them. And they are so clueless about each other. It's pretty wild. And is this the same brat that we followed around in Gardens of the Moon who didn't have it together until chapter 17? How did he get all this insight? Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I think Piranha's always been a very insightful guy, and that is both his greatest strength and what causes him the most trouble. Because even when he was just a young soldier, he saw to the truth of things.
Yeah.
And he thought that by saying those truths that he was, doing the world a service.
Right.
Then he realizes that's not the case.
He had an attitude.
Yeah.
Insightful with an attitude. Okay, so Quick Ben and the Talamandus scenes where basically Quick Ben was testing how, what's Talamandus's threshold for protecting him from the poison in the Warrens. I thought that was very clever writing to be able to showcase Quick Ben's powers. So I really enjoyed that. And also the exchange that they had. Telemandus says, "We are relying upon you, Ben Adefon Delat," the stick snare growled. "To do what?" That's Quick Ben. "Whatever it is you're planning to do," Telemandus shrieked. "And it had better work."
Yep. He's also so duplicitous. Because even when he gives Telemandus a justification for drawing on his power, that's not the real reason. He was trying to determine whether or not the power was from Hood or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And after he figured it out, guess what he did? He didn't tell anybody.
Right. But now he also an interesting thing about that that adds to the duplicity stuff and the quick-wittedness of Quick Ben is he exploited the fact that his resources were depleted to do that. So he even used the expenditure of all his resources as a way to gather more intel.
5D chess.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
He is 10 parallel universes ahead of everyone else.
Right.
Rake, he gives us a little bit of humor, but also awesomeness. So the Tenascari are on the move towards Rake and the crew, and Rake says he's going to take care of them. And he just says, "I mean to scare them witless in person." And when I read that, I was like, "Oh my goodness, yes! I cannot wait to see this scene." And then no one spoke for a moment. Then Kaladin Brood began rummaging in a trunk for more cups. It's like, okay, well, we're gonna move on. Yeah.
That problem was sorted.
There's something else about Perrin. Perron doesn't take orders well, Whiskey Jack says to Rick. And I'm just like, I know, but he's a soldier and he wanted to be a soldier. What was he thinking? But then Perron also has this thought. Players in the game wanting no others. Players outside the game and wanting in. Players to the forefront and ones behind, moving in the shadows. Players who play fair, players who cheat. Gods, where do I begin to unravel all of this? And that just mirrors me as a reader. I'm like, oh my god, there's so many moving parts. Yeah, how do you go about unraveling all of this?
Slowly,
patiently.
with patience, yes.
There's a piece that there's an imagery that stood out to me. Shrouded once more in shadow, Quick Ben made his way down the rubble-littered street. Most of the fires had either died down or been extinguished, and not one of the remaining structures showed any light behind shutters or from gaping windows. The stars commanded the night sky, though darkness ruled the city. Damn eerie, Telemandus whispered. And this was after they had left Broach and Bocklin and they came into the city. And the description of that part was very cinematic. It also made me think of those Olympic villages. Like they were built for just that purpose. And then afterwards, like, they're supposed to help the economy and all of that. But a lot of them just are ghost towns and get abandoned. So, yeah, very eerie.
I also like how he notes that the city has been cleansed.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, okay, first of all, Ikovian prevented a lot of the same scenes that we see in Deadhouse Gates, with the Wiccans using the spirits of the dead.
Mm-hmm.
And also this, so I'm not a believer in spirits or the supernatural generally, but there are places that have a sense of tragedy about them.
Mm-hmm.
Like the former camps for the Holocaust, for example. Like you can, it feels like there's evil there, right? This just made me think of that.
Or like the visiting the 9/11 memorial kind of gives me that sense of there is something about that location.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know what the something is, but meaning the sense that if you just went there, it feels different.
Yeah.
And then lastly, going back to Quickbin's thoughts, there's a card in the deck in the House of Death that's been a role unfulfilled for a long, long time. The Magi. I think it's just found a face, one painted on a stupid acorn.
The sacrifices that Ikovian made at the end of this chapter were heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
Handing over the gray swords to the wolves of winter. I was so sad for him during those scenes. He did what had to be done, though.
Mm-hmm.
Solid dude.
Mm-hmm.
Solid.
And he is not yet done.
Nope.
I do have quotes, but I wrote my speculation up in the notes at the top, so I'm just going to do it now. I have picked up and discarded this idea multiple times, and I don't know why this chapter made me pick it back up and decide to talk about it. But I was asked during the first episode of Deadhouse Gates about Hood's secret for Haboric. And at the time, I thought that, and now again think, and I'm not sure why, because I didn't write down why. I think Hood knew and either arranged or prepared for the imminent contact between Haboric and Chaos. And that was the secret that he said he had for Haboric in the Deadhouse Gates prologue.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And this is hinted at. I remember what made me first think it is that he had his herald approach the Grey Swords well before Feanor was brought into the mortal realm. So
Okay.
but I think there's something in this chapter that made it come back up and made me go, nah, I think that again. I've been on and off here. Did you already read all your quotes, Panda?
I did.
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah. I'll just do the this one from Rake, and then maybe one more. It's about the subject I just brought up. So Rake says, in any case, those severed hands were as poison to Feanor. He could not touch them, nor could he remove them from his realm. He burned the tattoos announcing his denial upon the high priest's skin, and so sealed the virulent power of the hands, at least for the time being. And that should have been that. Eventually the priest would die, and his spirit would come to Feanor to retrieve what had been cruelly and wrongfully taken from him. That spirit would then become the weapon of Feanor's wrath, his vengeance upon the priests of the foul temple, and indeed upon the Claw and the Empress herself. A dark storm awaited the Malazan Empire, Whiskey Jack. But something's happened. I, the priest, has, by design or chance, come into contact with the Warren of Chaos, and I'm saying by design, an object perhaps forged within that Warren. The protective seal around his severed hands was obliterated by that vast, uncontrolled surge of power, and finding Feanor, those hands pushed. And then the other quote I'll give is from Mancy. Mancy says, "You're all hood-damned idiots, that's what you are. Clean this up, Mancy. Scrub that down. Bury this in the garden. Pack those trunks. We're leaving in a hurry. It's my curse. No one kills them. You think I like my job? Idiots. You think..."
Yeah, that's what I was referring to at the beginning of this chapter. The poor Mancy.
I had like
Poor
3 other
Mancy.
quotes, but that's enough for now.
Questions? Speculations?
Yeah, I got a question.
Mm-hmm.
And I have my own answer to it, but feel free to disagree with me. The Barghast mentioned that that Tog already has a mortal sword. It's Tok, right?
I did not think
Wouldn't
it
you
was...
like to know?
Do you think it's Tok, or do you think it's someone we don't know yet, or what do you think, Panda?
I didn't think it was... Oh wait, I was thinking of something else. Would it be Talk?
Well, I know he's got like Tog like writing in him right now. They're like together. I'm pretty sure.
I don't know. Well, yeah, the spirit of Tog is in him, but would that make him the mortal sword?
I don't know if that would make him the mortal sword, but I think he is Tog's mortal sword.
Okay, I don't know. Maybe, but I do think that the Barghasts have something to do with the throne of the beast hold because of the chapter 8 epigraph. I don't know exactly what, but something. Maybe Trots will do something. Hatan, I don't know. When Ash and Hurin talk about the first chaining, I think they're talking about the one in the past, but there's going to be one in the future. And I
There's
think
going to be a first chaining in the future.
No. When we talk about chaining the crippled god, sometimes you guys will say the first chaining, and we, Yasna and I are like, well, how many chainings are there or were there? And I'm just wondering,
Would they be
maybe.
saying that to us if there weren't already more than one chaining in the past of where we are at?
I think it's possible. I could be very, very wrong.
I'm gonna have to search the Fallen up to this point, first chaining and second chaining, and see if anything comes up.
Okay. Something more somber, more serious. So Paran notes that coincidences are important and that they do happen. They must happen because otherwise everything is predetermined and inevitable. And he's specifically talking about the elder gods. Like, hey, even the elder gods are taken by surprise by things. So I think this goes back to that theme of agency, which in Erickson puts the words to it, individual efficacy. And yeah, I wrote down a whole bunch of thoughts, but I'm not going to go through them. That was more for just like me trying to grapple with
Apparently, Duiker used to be really big on that.
right. For some people, it's more of a comfort to think that things are predetermined and that everything is just going to be okay. But at the same time, like, I don't think everything is going to be okay. And when somebody is going through stuff and somebody else tells them, oh, everything is going to be okay, I'm like, those words, like, you can't back them up. Anyway.
I'll just note that the philosophy of determinism does not necessitate things turning out okay.
Yeah,
Although
exactly.
a lot of the times when people say that, I think they're usually referring to religious beliefs that they have. There's some grand plan that's going to come to fruition.
Yeah. Or they're just saying it because it's something to say and they don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
Panda, were you going to mention your theory that you brought up to me about who the crippled god's mortal sword is? Because this is the chapter for that conversation. If you were,
Yes. Okay, I'll just throw it out there. Corbulo Dom.
and I think that's very likely. But my hedge is Toblikai.
Which is also, I would agree that is also a good candidate. And we could both be completely wrong. It could be somebody
We could.
just...
I admit that somebody on a distant continent could be, as we know, even on a continent we haven't seen yet, as we know from chapter 20's ending.
Yeah.
So
could be a Kobian.
He's not on
No.
a distant continent.
No,
No,
No, he's not.
he doesn't fit the bill.
But is he?
Could be lying, but
Yeah.
No.
We have a man who thinks he's Itkovian in the book.
Oh my god.
you're silly.
The Bargas ancestors had hidden blades in the sides of their canoes.
Mm-hmm. I get major Damascus steel vibes from those blades.
And what will be the purpose of these swords, of those young warriors who will wield them? You may find an answer one day, Ganuus Paran. Yes, I think we will. Yeah, the Bargas are going back out to sea, and I wonder if this will be explored more in Midnight Tides.
Midnight
Well,
Tides is a
Midnight Tides.
prequel.
Oh, is it?
Yes,
Oh, okay. Fine.
I wouldn't call it a prequel per se.
it takes place before Gardens of the Moon, right?
It does.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so
And
they're not going to go out to sea in that one unless it's really, really long in the time scale.
I mean, it could be like when the Bargas were out at sea at the first place. I don't know. That's all I got for chapter 18.
Chapter 19?
Chapter 19. The second gathering of the Talani Mass occurs. Anamander intimidates some peasants in dragon form, then allows Whiskey Jack to execute some women. The Maib encounters Talk in her dreams.
Rake is so
Rake-
cool in this chapter.
Yeah, he's
He is.
just yes.
What a bro.
And sorry, I can't form words apparently.
It was cool. I think that's enough.
Mhm.
Whiskey Jack did him a bit of a disservice, but then recognizes he did him a disservice.
And they became closer because of it.
They have something more in common to share.
I think Whiskey Jack was still right to do what he did, because Dragnipur is not a pleasant fate.
Sure, but what I was referring to is him only seeing Rake's ruthlessness and not his mercy or compassion.
Yeah, I
Yes.
did wonder about that because he made it sound like Whiskey Jack made it sound like to Dujek that I was lessening the burden on Rake, but at the time when he stopped Rake, that's not what he was thinking. Or he kind of after the fact justified what he did.
I liked how worried he was about his perception by his soldiers and Corlat. Was it Corlat or was it Dujek who
Corlat.
reassured him? It was Corlat.
Yeah, Corlat was basically like, you're underestimating them. Stop.
Which happens a lot.
Yeah, that reminded me of the scene in Gardens where Fiddler told Whiskey Jack, like, hey, you're actually doing us a disservice by being so distant and not like showing emotion and being vulnerable and Yeah.
Bridge burner. So we saw an undead dragon.
Yeah. And I figured out how I could have figured that out before this point. If I would have just searched for every mention of Bonecaster once Haboric set up his Bonecaster. Because that's we were told her name as in Gardens, in a list of Bonecasters, basically.
We sure were.
Would that be a good use of your time? Yes, I know the name of this dragon.
I have to
I mean, I
admit-
spent a lot of time trying to figure this out, okay?
I have to admit, it completely went over my head. And who is the undead dragon?
The Bonecaster named Olar Ethel.
Yeah, that's her.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize she was the undead
And
dragon. Okay.
in her soul-taken form, she is as an undead twin to TM.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
To TM?
Team is the goddess of dragons, the mother of all
I
dragons.
didn't realize that. Okay.
I didn't know that either. I just figured it was a really important dragon. Sounds like it
I
was.
should not have said that, I guess.
Yeah, it's not revealed so far, but I believe it's not an uncommon thing in mythology. At least in Dungeons and Dragons, there is Tiamat.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is
Does that
So-
mean the one that we saw in Deadhouse Gates going through the Warrens? That's what's her name? Or
Olar
Yeah.
Ethel.
okay.
She said she was searching through the Warrens.
Hmm.
That was her. And she was mentioned once in Gardens of the Moon by Talk as a Bonecaster.
So, speaking of Bonecasters and stuff, Kellenved has not yet yielded the first throne. Does he know that? Does he realize he could still use that thing?
Does Shadow Throne know things?
Well, I'm just saying, like, did he get to his goal of taking Shadow Throne and just kind of like, well, screw the Talani mess. They got me where I needed to get, and I'm just gonna forget about them.
Yeah. Once you're done with the tool, you throw it away.
I mean, I don't know enough about Kellenved to know what he's thinking.
Don't worry, neither do I.
You're just messing with me, huh? So I don't like Silver Fox.
I like Silver Fox.
I think she's a bad.
Okay, I disagree with you. Well, okay, I don't disagree with you not liking Silver Fox. I disagree with your reasoning for not liking Silver Fox.
Well, so that the listeners know my reasoning, since I haven't said it yet, it's her decision to deny the Talani mass release.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is awful. That's a lot of people to make suffer because of your own personal crap.
I mean, yes, but I think for the character, she hasn't matured enough yet to be able to make that decision.
She's like a couple months old, yeah.
Well, we also find out that Silver Fox, the character, right? Not Tattersail, not Nightchill, not Belurden, but Silver Fox, the actual Bonecaster, who apparently is the daughter of Pranchol.
I mean, Pranchol denied that, and then I think later Krupp said that he was, so I'm not taking that as fact.
I mean, that's why I say apparently, but who knows? But there is the character of Silver Fox. And regardless of what her origin really is, like, I think that she's still a child. She's very alone. She hasn't actually had interactions with her own kind, people who actually really understood her. And even when she does meet with the Telanimas, like, she's still set apart. So she's trying to belong, but she hasn't quite found it, and she has questions and answers, and she feels abandoned. So she's not ready to let go of her kind that she just found.
I think that the only person that she could really relate to would be Kalava.
Mm.
And also, I think it's important to keep in mind that Silver Fox, she has these souls within her, but I don't think she's conscious of them per se, because in an earlier conversation, someone was asking her if Tattersail was in the front or it's Nightchill, and she's like, I don't know.
Mm.
So even though Piran talked to Nightchill's soul at some point, I don't think that's a conscious stream of thought within her own head.
Mm.
And also,
I think it's more like Quickbin.
Like
it's integrated.
Maybe? I'm not sure. And also, I think she has another motive for keeping the Talanimas around that is motivated by Tattersail, whether or not she knows it.
Agreed.
The Talanimas are a hugely powerful force with which she could fix the world, or she thinks she could fix the world.
Mm-hmm.
She at the very least could help her friends, who she feels she has let down at every turn in her life. Always an even exchange, she says later.
Always an even exchange. Yeah, because there's some sort of gift that she's
trying to give them. Yeah.
I accept that all of the things you guys just said are true, and I still am disgusted by somebody who could be that selfish in the face of that much suffering. And, I can understand the motivations without agreeing with the decision or like being happy with the person who makes those decisions.
I agree with all of you, but mostly Jasnah.
Okay, thanks. I think through Silver Fox's character arc, we're gonna see her change her mind. It's just at this point she's not ready.
I see a parallel with her to Anamander Rake, because they are both leading a nation of people who have kind of given up and are just kind of doing their best with that. Anamander hasn't euthanized his people yet, despite the benefit of all his experience.
But are the Teist splintering against each other and losing their cohesion as a people to the degree that the IMAS are? Turning against each other, some of them serving the crippled god, that kind of thing?
Well, as far as we know, there are just not very many Teist left. And they all follow Animander Rake because he's the guy who gets stuff done.
The ND.
Yeah, I think if the Tlanimas had an Animander, they probably wouldn't follow the Crippled God, or some of them wouldn't splinter off and follow the Crippled God.
Quotes?
Just before that, isn't it interesting how the Maib runs into Talk, and he thinks that she is either the
Seer.
matron or the seer come to taunt him again.
Yeah.
Yes.
And despite neither of them knowing who the other is, they get a really good conversation out of it.
And it's an interesting reversal of the first time Talk interacts with her, because he's chasing her and she thinks he's, attacking her and is sent by Silver Fox. So they mistake each other there, and then, or she mistakes him, and then in this one, he mistakes her.
My quote is Murillo and Cole. As have I, so long as it's understood that this will likely mean our financial ruin. All that might be achieved is a kinder end to her life. A worthwhile exchange, then. Cole did not ask for another affirmation of his friend's resolve. He knew Murillo too well for that. It's not but coin, isn't it? No matter the amount. A fair exchange to ease an old woman's suffering, one way or the other. For at least we will have cared, even if she never awakens and thus knows nothing of what we do. Indeed, it is perhaps better that way, cleaner, simpler. Unwitnessed.
Pretty good, guys.
Yeah.
So I've got one from Krupp. Actually, I'm going to do that one second. First, I have one that I believe is from, I don't know who it's from, but it's a cool quote. It says, "War is not a natural state. It is an imposition and a damned unhealthy one. With its rules, we willingly yield our humanity. Speak not of just causes, worthy goals. We are takers of life, servants of Hood, one and all."
Yeah.
I think it's Whiskey Jack.
Whiskey Jack to
Yeah.
Corlat.
Talking about, I believe, the tennis gallery.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the
how it's not-
necessity of killing the mothers of the dead seed.
Corlat responds to Whiskey Jack in that quote that you gave.
Mhm.
And she makes a really important distinction, which is you're not afraid of the questions that follow such acts. Because I'm thinking, like, the women of the Dead Seed killed a lot of people. Whiskey
Mhm.
Jack and his soldiers also kill a lot of people. Like, are they really the same? Like, what makes them different? And I think Corlat here is trying to show him how he is different and he's not just the same.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's an answer to, like, so Whiskey Jack poses like a grimdark approach to looking at war and morality, but she answers it. And that's what sets Malazan apart, is that it has those themes, but then they're answered.
I think also Whiskey Jack very aptly demonstrates the difference between him and the tennis gallery. He will not kill a defenseless mob, and they were willing to do that. And he's also willing to recognize their humanity, even despite all the terrible things they've done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not only him, but also Ecovian, right? Because, what is the difference between the Tanniscari's like religious fervor and the Grey Sword's fervor for Fenner? And he recognizes that, hey, we're more common, we have more in common, really, and we can recruit from these people, at least the ones who are willing to come to their side. So yeah, it goes back to how Erickson shows like how similar paths become so different.
Yeah, I have a really difficult time reconciling the nature of the Grey Swords with itself, because they seem to understand the horrors of war, and yet at the same time they sell their swords and actively perpetuate it.
That is true. But wasn't there justification that they were they're servants of the god of war? So now that justification is gone.
It's not gone. Tog is a god of war.
But they're not.
Tog and Fandaray. Don't forget the females.
Isn't Trake the god of war?
There are like 3.
It's
At least.
complicated.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The last thing for this chapter is the how the military deals with the burden of the consequences of what they have to do as soldiers, and how the process, the procedures that they have diminishes the personal cost of any single individual. And yeah, I thought that Erickson did a really good job of articulating that concept.
Yeah, something I never thought of before Dujek said that.
Mm-hmm.
Chapter 20?
Chapter 20, last chapter. Talk sightsees in an exotic new location. A council is convened outside Capistan. Itkovian, Whiskey Jack, and Quick Ben go drinking without Krupp. A second council, this time women only, actually managed to get things done. Cole and Murillo steal the Maib. Lady Envy commandeers a floating town and makes contact with a Talani Mas returned from a deadly war.
That floating town, man. What a
Cool, right?
concept.
The Mecros. Yeah.
Crow City.
Oh, Rathburn being an idiot and demanding Brood give her Burn's hammer, and then he does. That was such a. I mean, it's tragic for Burn or Rathburn, but it is funny. But then you also see Brood's compassion, I guess, understanding. But that scene did make me think of the scene where all the Avengers are trying to pick up Thor's hammer. Yeah.
That scene is very interesting, especially when Cruel and Brood and Quick Ben, they're all like look at each other, and Itkovia notices them, and Brood is healing somebody. I'm just saying it's really interesting. That's it.
Ikovian has a lot of he observes a lot of things, picks up a lot of things.
It's very observant.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I really liked Kaladin and Brood's interactions with Itkovian. I liked how much respect Brood had for Itkovian.
Poor Itkovian, man.
Yeah, I mean, he did lose his god though, so he's feeling a bit lost at the moment.
Yeah.
Did anybody else like just have their heart like bleeding when they were reading the helmet exchange?
It didn't impact me as much as that.
Oh my god, it was so sad. How could it not?
I thought it was very good.
It was good.
Yeah.
But it was sad, like the way the soldier like just like wanted to show Itkovian like how much he respected him and how much he like thought Itkovian was making a mistake, and Itkovian didn't want to hear it.
I think it speaks to how little Itkovian cares about whether or not people recognize that he's doing the right thing. He's going to do the right thing regardless.
Mm-hmm.
He's very much not a virtue signaler.
Yeah.
Nope.
WWID.
What would Itkovian do?
Words to live by.
Beat
We got
himself.
Ikarium and we got Itkovian.
I don't actually have this written down as a quote, but I really like the bit where Cruel reveals himself, and then there's a little exchange between Stunny and one of the Wraths. Does your god truly? Yeah, Wrath Shadow Throne. Does your god truly know how small your brain really is? What is the issue? Elder gods don't know the secret handshake? His mask is too realistic? He's immortal, you slut. And there is a very particular scene in TV that came to mind when reading this. And
you ignorant slut.
Yes. Dwight, you ignorant slut.
I made the meme about that for the other chapter.
Oh,
did you know that's from Saturday Night Live, right?
No.
I did not know that.
Oh, really? I thought it was from The Office.
The Office took that. Like Michael was trying to be like that joke on Saturday Night Live.
Oh, well then I didn't dig deep enough to make my meme. Should have made it from the Saturday Night Live version.
Yeah, and then Gruntle answering the Wrath Shadow Throne calling Stony Slut.
Yep.
Yes, but yeah, I marked that as well. That was funny. Stony's.
I'm pissed off at mid Gruntle.
Yeah.
The end of this chapter. So last episode, when we were talking about the town that got hit by the Dread Fleet, I was like, "Oh, I can't say anything because I know stuff." This chapter made me realize maybe I don't know stuff. Because when they brought up a sail, this whole other continent with humans powerful enough to destroy entire Talan armies. I was like, how do I know the fleet's not from a sail and it's not this other thing from Esselmont's book that I thought it might be? So, yeah, I have no idea what happened to that town.
I really need to read
That's my walk away. Huh?
I really need to read a sale. I should do that in the next couple months or so.
Yes, you do it. Read Orb Scepter Throne first.
Oh, the thing I was
Sandstone.
referring to is just from what I know from Knight of Knives, which is very little.
The Trigal Guild.
Yeah.
Making a deal with Tattersail or Silver Fox.
Yes, but also they've got some very powerful magic.
Yup.
And I'm just like, so we've seen Quick Ben give the ability to Kalam to open the Imperial Warren. I'm wondering if that's the same kind of magic that the Trigel Guild uses to be able to open all these other warrens. And like,
It's a possibility.
I don't think so, but it
Okay.
hasn't been ruled out as of yet.
My initial instinct is to disagree with Ashaman.
Okay.
I like the beginning of the chapter when Talk is being comforted by the Seer Doman, and he
Yeah.
was touched by that.
Yes.
That scene with Picker and Blend finally showed up with Bacalane and Corval Roach. That was great.
Yes.
Where they punch them?
Yeah,
They beat the
Like-
crap out of him.
it was so good. I love that.
And then
I really
Nancy was like, don't hit me. And they were like, why would we hit you?
and Picker's giving Blend clap, and she's like, "Well, you've just been hiding out in the shadows." And then here come them again, and she hides again, and then they
Yeah.
take him down.
That's the rogue at the table going like, oh, I use stealth every time.
I mean, if you could hide from any uncomfortable situation in your life, wouldn't you? I think we all would.
Yeah, but we see that it's not just, she doesn't just use it to hide from things. She uses it to get her sneak attack damage dice to knock out the necromancer.
It's true. And to eavesdrop on a lot of people.
Sure.
Lots of eavesdropping.
You play D&D too. All right, this is my last note for the episode. Carelessly constructed, Krupp allows, yet none of you have ever seen Krupp dance. And dance he can, with breathtaking artistry and grace. Nay, he glides like an unbroken egg on a grease skillet. Stumble? Fall? Krupp? Never.
He rolls, that's why. He just rolls.
He rolls. Mm-hmm.
He doesn't stumble.
I like the bit where the new, I think the new shield anvil of the Grey Swords is talking to Silver Fox, and she's like, "So Tog and Fanderay want their wolves," and Silver Fox is like, "No, I need to do something with them first." And then the shield anvil's like, "They might kill you and all of the people you know." She's like, "Gotta do what you gotta do."
She says always an even exchange, doesn't she? In response
She
to that?
does. Yes.
Always an even exchange. She would gladly die if she could give her gift.
To who?
But what if she dies before giving her gift? What's she gonna do?
She'll be dead.
Right? That logic is not very sound. Just saying.
Yeah. Once again, I do not like Silver Fox.
Oh, you don't like her for this? Really? Why is that?
No.
What is a really, really good gift?
The wolves want their children back. They were included in the ritual without their say-so. They were just encompassed in it. Let them go.
What if she's gonna give them a better whatever before they go back to their mom and dad?
She didn't tell me that. All I see is her holding on to everything.
Because she's a scary little child.
I will say, I am very hesitant to judge Silver Fox here. I don't like judging people based on incomplete information as a rule, though.
That's fair.
I'm always willing to adjust my judgments with new information. So far, I'm not a fan of Silver Fox.
Also fair.
Jump to conclusions and then take a step back.
Just don't do too much harm. Questions and speculations.
Do you think that, okay, deep moral question here. Do you think that Itkovian, Whiskey Jack, and Quick Ben should have invited Krupp to drink with them?
I want to read that.
Didn't Krupp invite himself?
He tried to.
He was like, "Oh, Whiskey Jack is calling me over."
Was just like, nope. I'm not doing that.
Didn't it kind of end on him saying that though? So we don't really.
It did, yes.
So
Henry
for all we
finally
know,
said
he did drink with them.
it's possible.
I'm sure he butted himself in, and they would have had to physically prevent him from joining them.
They have that means.
Better be on the good side of an elder god? Wait, I got that confused. Never mind. Just
Crump
kidding.
is not an elder god.
No, but he's like under his wing.
Sort of.
They're mates.
Yes, something there.
I have a bit of a criticism for Krupp, actually.
Yeah.
Because, okay, Krupp is a very smart man. He knows he's a very smart man. He knows he has the power to change things, probably for the better. And yet, he very explicitly avoids power at all costs. Now, I think that when you have abilities of that scale, you're obligated to use them to the best of your ability. To fully.
He does use them.
Sort of. He could have become much more powerful than he is, for example. And until this point in the story, he basically sat around in Darujistan his entire life, or from what we see. Just kind of like stealing people's pastries and fencing stolen goods.
And setting up a spy network that's completely embedded in the political economy of Darujistan.
And setting up the Trigal Trade Guild.
But I think he has very regional interests as of yet.
I'm pretty sure that that his current interests are standing in the path of the crippled god. Can it get more global than that?
But is the crippled god the first thing that went wrong with the world? I don't think so.
Okay, so Krupp's powerful and he's therefore responsible for all the ails of the world. Got it.
No, that's not it. I just think that if you can change things, you have a moral obligation to change things.
And I think that Krupp did.
Yeah, I feel like the dedication, being dedicated to preventing despots from ever reigning in Darujistan is a pretty big, lofty goal that the Eel's resources were directed towards before the start of Gardens of the Moon.
The government of Darujistan left a lot to be desired, and Darujistan is just one city. It's a small place a small pond for the smartest man in the world.
Right.
Are you trolling us?
Okay, I don't know.
Can't tell. Okay.
Speculation, Panda?
It's more of a question. So food was scarce. Ikovian wondered how his new destriant was managing. At the very least, shelters were being prepared for the hapless refugees. My question isn't actually necessarily like directly related to this quote, but it did make me think of, so there's the city of Kapustan, and there is food in the city, yet the Tenaskari did not think to like eat the food first before eating the people. And it's like, this is just not addressed at all in anything that we've read so far. It's like, will the Tenaskari, what I'm trying to ask here is like, did they just completely lose their taste for normal food? Because the Grey Swords recruiting them, like, they're not gonna continue letting them eat people, so they're gonna have to change their diet.
So I'm pretty sure that this is sort of addressed in that the armies of the Panian Domin, like, they don't give the Tenaskari food, but the army is much bigger than just the Tenaskari, which means that when they conquer a city, they take the food, they apportion it among themselves, and perhaps send some back to Panian territories, whatever. Yeah, it's established earlier on that the Panian Seer does not give supplies to the Tenaskari. But that's not the entire army. There's like the Bedeklites and the Seer Domin and the Erdamin. That's who has the food when they take over. They're the ones in control of the supplies, the actual army. The Tenaskari is just like separate from that.
But when we see the siege, right? Like, there's no mention of like anybody going for the food.
Sure. Yeah, because I mean, we didn't get to see the mundane details behind the lines of the Panians. We just see them attacking and doing stuff.
What I think the Tenaskari, the rationale behind them, perhaps not prioritizing the ready-made food, is that one, they're very hungry and in a state of mass hysteria, right?
Yes.
and they have been eating people the entire way over.
Yes.
So I think that's sort of the first thing they go to just cannibalize whatever's in front of them. I assume that there might have been some going to inns as well, and stealing food that they could eat if they had an opportunity. I think they just eat whatever they can get.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess it's more of like the gray swords are gonna have to reconcile
Yeah.
their choice of diet or their diet habits. Now that they're not part of.
Lunchtime. Are we having people today? No, stop asking.
Right.
Yeah.
I just thought like the Tauskari kind of saw cannibalism as their identity, and it's like, hey, that's just what we do.
Yeah, I get that too. And it's just like it almost seems like they've evolved or mentally kind of just accepted that is what they eat for food.
Finished? All right. That concludes this episode. If you want to join the read-along and/or contribute listener questions, check us out on the Legendarium's Discord. You can find the link on thelegendarium.com. Also follow us on Twitter @GreenTeamPod for updates and fun times. Shout out to Horizon Brave for starting it all. Check out the Legendarium podcast for Wheel of Time, Cosmere, Lord of the Ring content, and so much more. Thank you to our panelists, Ashaman, JasnahAsABoy, and BefuddledPanda. I'm Hurinfan. Until next time.
Pew pew.
Bye.
Pew, 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 pew.
Yeah,
You were this close to saying Zed, weren't you?
I was.
I was thinking the same thing.
I don't want to start a debate on the merits of alphabetical pronunciation just yet. Maybe in a later episode.
I mean,
fine with
I
it.
accept Zed. It's fine.
Just as long as you're not singing.
What?
Okay. It doesn't fit the rhyme scheme.
Oh, okay. Oh, when you're singing the alphabet.
ABCs, you mean. See, the way I found out that some people say Zed is from punk songs. So.